2026-2024. I am Christy Racinas, and we have Senator Landon, my co-chair, and we have Representative Nicholas. Representative Sherwood is online. Hi, Craig. And I think the superintendent is not able to be here, and we are not sure on the treasurer may pop in. We'll wait and see. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and jump into a project update with Rachel.
Hi, thank you all for having us back again. I love being able to be allowed back into places, so thank you very much. I do have a new face for you, but certainly not new to the project. This is Rick Smith. He's our VP of Experiential Design. He runs our entire creative department at Exhibition Invitations. Would you give a better introduction?
I mean, you covered all the hotspots. Yeah, thanks everybody. Happy to be here. I have been involved in this project in the background for quite a while, so this is not news to me, or new to me. I have been with DI for 15 years and have been doing this kind of work for, oh my God, I don't want to date myself, over 20 years. We'll just say over 20 years. This is an exciting project for us. You know, we feel like we're making some very good project in a lot of different areas, and excited to show you guys some of the progress that we've been making. So thanks for having me.
So we'll start with progress there. We've got several things to go through. If you saw the number of slides we have in the deck, you'd be a little concerned, but we will be flying through different sections of this. So we'll start with the project update. As we did a couple months ago, we explained how when we're looking at projects, we take a step back, we look at it from an objective standpoint, timing and budget. Are we doing what we set out to do, and are we doing it on time and on budget? So from an objective standpoint, is it on strategy? Yes, you'll continue to see things today that shows that we are bringing people inspiration to come to the Capitol, welcoming them to the People's House, and letting them know that they belong here and the Capitol belongs to them. From a scheduled standpoint, there's been a monumental amount of effort on not only DI side, but the entire board team, this whole subcommittee's team, in the last couple months, as we really get over what is a pretty good hurdle in terms of signage and wayfinding and our static exhibits. So I want to thank you all for all the time that you've spent reviewing things and files. I know that can be tedious at times, but really appreciate everybody's expertise and feedback on that. We are on time to still install all of that in October. And then hot on its heels, going to be package 3 and package 4. So there's been a lot of work behind the scenes going on regarding the digital exhibits, as well as the civics lab and student learning center. We've got a lot of really great activity that we're excited to show, but we're really focusing today on package 2. And we're on budget. So we do have some contingency monies that we've utilized that we'll talk about later in the meeting, but everything is within the budget that was previously approved within the ROMs that we've all discussed, and continue to keep a very close eye on that. So overall project update it's a very healthy project. And you guys are not seeing the same thing I'm seeing. Okay, we are going to take a quick pause here. I'm going to go to my hot. Rick will tell you a joke. Like
No.
Come on, Rick.
Can't do jokes on the spot.
Come on, Rick.
Did hear a good one the other day, but I can't remember. Great dad joke. I just can't retain them.
Sure, yeah. Okay, team. Are you in there?
I can be.
Or Ian, are you able to jump in there?
I certainly can. Good morning, everyone.
Man.
It says I have unstable internet. I feel like it's judging me.
Presenting in one moment. Here we go. Slideshow. Is this where we were at?
No, we're on budget. Yeah, you can hit the next slide. Any questions before we go into public meeting rooms? Okay. Everybody's good. We'll just keep going. Thank you, Ian. So for public meeting rooms, our goal really is to extend the tourism story. So we want to celebrate all tourism in Wyoming. And we're really looking at dividing what that tourism story is between the 6 public meeting rooms as well as the auditorium. You're going to see a large range of different locations, really try to hit as many locations as we can beyond what the major hits are that people think of when they're outside of the state, and reassure every citizen that they belong again here and they feel included. Go to the next slide, Ian. Some of this is just a reminder of where we were. So we were looking at the different geography regions within the state and looking at that by kind of a loose definition of what the drainages are. So we were looking at different images that would hit those different areas. If you want to hit the next slide. So we separated the state and aligned it with what those 6 public meeting rooms are and are heading each of those major drainages. So within each of those rooms, if you want to go to the next slide, in each of those rooms, you will have 6 to 7 images that highlight different beautiful sections of that area, as well as a half wall panel that will talk about other locations that you would want to visit. Again, really trying to reinforce that there are a lot of things to do within Wyoming and a lot of places to go. Ian, if you want to go to the next slide. So our goal today, because we're going to show you a lot of things. So our goal today, you got to have a goal, is to look at the areas that we want to feature for the major images for each room. So we were looking for approval for that. When we're also looking for confirmation that we're headed generally in the right direction for the imagery that we are showing. We are also going to ask for approval for the frame and mat options that we have to share. And then when we come back next time, we'll walk through what those images are, get approval of the individual images for each room, and we'll get approval of the copy that will go in imagery that will go into the half wall panel. And when we're looking at the imagery, we're really looking for inspirational imagery. We know that sometimes those meetings can be maybe a little lengthy in those rooms. So we're really looking for something that will inspire with beautiful landscapes. We're looking for vibrant colors. We're looking at, when we look at those vibrant colors, some of that really happens during that golden hour. So we want to really try to focus on that if we can. We want it to be artistically composed when we're looking at it. Wildlife is great, but we are trying to stay away from any people or man-made structures unless it really does show off what that area is. And the reason we try not to have people in it is that we'll end up dating it just by the clothes and everything that they are wearing. So really trying to focus again on those landscapes. And we're looking at different orientations of those images depending on what we feel like would work the best. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking about it. I'm gonna start showing. So for for public meeting room number 1, so this is the Southeast Wyoming area, the North Platte area. These are the 7 locations that we want to feature, and we've got a couple backups in case there's any discussion around those 7 areas being the primary areas. So since we are looking for approval of these locations, I'm going to pause here and see if there's any discussion around these areas. Do these seem like the 7 highlights to show in this area?
I'm very happy with the list.
Wonderful. And it might help. We'll go to the next slide and show you some of the images. These aren't the final images, but you can see directionally where we were headed. So for each of those 7 areas, this is a similar image. If it's not the image, we're still working through that and getting rights and everything. Working very closely with Amy and her team with tourism. These would be the direction of those 7 images. You can see there's a lot of beauty. And when I walk through those parameters that we're looking at, there's a lot of color, vibrancy, really shows off the landscapes. And then if you go to the next slide, Ian.
Rachel?
Yeah.
Can we interrupt for a minute? The subcommittee members wanted to see if the deck can be sent so they can, it's a little easier to see it on their screens.
Oh,
If
absolutely.
that's something that can be sent now, we can forward it.
Absolutely.
Great.
Ashley, are you able to download that? Remove the hidden slides and send that to Rihanna?
Yep, of course, I'm working on it.
Thank you. I'm really just wanting to show off my delegation skills in this meeting, so aces on that. Note that, please.
Yeah, noted.
So these, on the left side, these would be the 7 primary locations that we just discussed. And then on the right side, we have a long list of possible locations that we would be able to show. So again, this isn't necessarily the final list, but directionally where we're going. When we do this half panel, it's not necessarily going to be the narrative that you have reviewed for the interpretive panels that are throughout the rest of the Capitol. This will be a little more conversational style. So we will be able to get in a little bit more than maybe what we would have in an interpretive style. But we'll definitely hit the high points. So knowing that we've got additional locations that we will show in the panel, is everybody comfortable with the 7 locations? And we're gonna do this 5 more times. Don't be shy.
I have a question. A couple different things. It helps to see the area map, so we know what's in and what's out of it, each one to know how we rule out what might be there. But then going back to the photos that you have, those are all kind of panoramic vistas. And I would think that my question is, are they all going to be color? And if they're all landscape, then they kind of, to me, they'll blend into each other from room to room without much distinction other than they're just beautiful. And so I'm wondering if we need to be a little bit more broader in what so that they're not all just landscapes. And so you've got 5 rooms with 5 landscapes. I just think that that'll be kind of overpowering and dominant. So it's not really learning much other than just beauty from those particular areas. And it's probably not the right thing for tourism, because if they're aerial photos, then you're not learning anything. If you're a tourist coming in and walking down through these things to really get a feel for what those in a really good representation of what the land really looks like. If we take the most beautiful things in the world and put them on the wall like the Tetons, just throwing it out as kind of, as I'm seeing this, like, what else can we do, or what else might we do?
Okay. One of the points in terms of black and white versus color, we did intentionally choose color just to add some more vibrancy into those rooms.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, so we can do, in terms of orientation, landscape and portrait, we can play around with that a little bit. I do like the idea of it really piquing your curiosity of you kind of see something beautiful, so it'll draw you in, and then you see where it's at, and then you can follow up on the panel. I believe that's more of the intent. I want to open it to everybody else as well.
Is there any point where we have a map of one?
On the half panel, wall panel, there will be, on half wall panel, we are going to have an inset map with that area highlighted. Depending on how many locations we have of the additional locations besides those 7, I don't know that we're necessarily going to put a pin in every single one, because it could get pretty cluttered. But there will definitely be a map on the panel.
What I'm talking about is a real map that would be on a panel on the screen like you have right here. That is as large as the screen. It has a breakdown of what Wyoming looks like. If you go to the state capitol in Colorado, in the basement, you go out and they have a map. It's actually a bust, basically, of the all the mountain ranges on the floor, and you stand on top of it. So, and it just seems to me that if there would be a place to have a map like that, or some type of a a relief to it. That would be like a large photo, so that it's, like of the whole stage.
Yeah, we can certainly consider that as, maybe something outside of that room that more people would have access to.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, go
Madam
ahead.
Chairman, the question I've got is that I had thought that what we were gonna do, we had these 6 places and each room was gonna have that theme. Then we've got our photographs that or pictures that you've given us. Now you're not gonna put all of those in every room. You're just gonna put one of those landscapes in one room and then have other pictures in that room.
Actually, all 7 of those would be in there. Ian, if you want to go to slide.
In every room?
And Madam Chair, I might be able.
So treasurer, the screen that's up right now, these are all the Southeast Wyoming ones, so they would go in the Southeast room.
Okay, so these are all the ones from Southeast. Okay, all right.
And then each
Okay.
area would have 6
6 or 7.
6 or 7 pictures from that
Mhm.
area.
Yeah, don't we have a slide in here that shows the images in the room?
Yeah, Ian, if you'll go to slide 14, if you go up about 4 slides, go back a couple slides.
And Madam Chair, while he's looking for that slide, I'll maybe give a little bit more context for each of these rooms. The photos will be selected for that drainage. So WHS is confirming that it is in that location. Geographically, it ends up, you may recall that it ends up organizing the way Wyoming's laid out. So the Green River room is in the southwest corner, PMR 2. And the idea, the distinction between the images in the room and the half wall panel is the images in the room, and we've been working with Amy at Tourism, is there are other types of images that are kind of interesting things, but the concern was over time that maybe as you're sitting in there, it's a little easier on the eyes to see some of the most beautiful landscapes of that area, but they're not meant to be all the Tetons and all Yellowstone. So for example, in that first set you saw the view of the Laramie River going up towards the Snowies. There's another one of Lake Marie. So the idea is you kind of pull out things that are maybe lesser known, or when people come to the state from that area, they can say, oh yeah, that's Ayers Bridge. I live right by there, or, you know, whatever the little geographic highlight is. But we had asked DI, and this may be something the subcommittee feels differently about, we had asked them to avoid buildings and structures, just again, kind of for that visual appearance that you have in the room. But if you guys would like to take a different direction, there are pictures, tourism has pictures of forts, the charcoal kilns. We actually had taken that out. We thought it would be interesting to profile on the panel as a list of things to do in the Green River area, but we hadn't thought it was the most visually compelling story for that space. So that's kind of where your staff and DI have gotten with WHS to this point.
Yeah, I guess Lake Marie, I've never seen it from that vantage point. I don't know how long it would take me to hike up there to get to that, but a tourist can see it from the highway, and it's a beautiful sight just from the highway. But yeah, a little bit, I think, on the same line that maybe the Representative Nicholas was going on. That it'd be nice to, you know, have something that, well, I guess, I don't know, from the tourism thing, maybe you want to turn that into a picture that people have to spend 2 days to get to look at it if they actually wanted to. The other question I've got is that the flags and the state seal, they're going to stay in the meeting rooms. We're not doing anything with those, and the pictures are going to go on either side of the seal. Is that the plan?
Yes, correct. So
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just didn't want to look at, you know, like the bottom one. That's the back of the meeting rooms on the back with the 3 pictures in that perspective then.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And then the
All right.
pictures that will be on the side, that's the difference between the 6 or 7. Some meeting rooms have an additional screen in that room, but it will be that will leave the flags and the state seal and really be the highlight up front. With the
Okay.
images.
All right. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I've got.
Madam Chair. From a tourism perspective, these inspirational pictures are kind of a once in a lifetime shot. So they're at a specific time, specific place by a photographer that has staked out the area. It is not the Medicine Bow Peak. I've hiked all over that. I've never seen it, but it doesn't take away from the grandeur and the beauty of Medicine Bow Peak. And so anything like this that inspires them to go out and see the peak, take that beautiful snowy range highway to go out to Fremont Canyon. Laramie Peak, I think, is one of the most unused, underrated mountain ranges in the entire state. So anything that we're presenting something that is gonna inspire them to go and do something they normally wouldn't do or go someplace they normally wouldn't go, that's a win for tourism. And our big thing is in tourism is to direct them away from our iconic locations. And so these photos we're presenting definitely are not directing them just to Old Faithful, just to the Tetons, just to Devil's Tower. So from a tourism perspective, we want that awe, that wow, I want to go there. Most people are gonna know unless you're there at sunset, you're not gonna get that beautiful view or that, tree right in the middle. Thousands of people every year try to replicate Ansel Adams' picture, right, of the Snake River, not realizing the Snake River has shifted from when he's taken it, and there's trees there now, but it doesn't stop people from still going out to stand in the spot that Ansel Adams captured that photo.
I guess I'd go with something different on Laramie Peak. I'd search for another one. That one, it doesn't seem too inspiring to me. The foreground just, yeah. The peak's lost. I don't know if there's a better picture or not, but that's, yeah, compared to the other ones, it's kind of underwhelming.
Yes, and this is, at this point, it is directionally of where we're going. So it sounds like that we're in the right direction, but not every individual photo may not be exactly where we are at. So that's the work that the core team and DI and WHS are doing right now. And so you'll have those to approve for the next round.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with Representative Nicholas, but I do think the opportunity we're trying to take is to say, and I can speak from this growing up in Riverton and being a native, it's like, oh, Cheyenne, that's like just plains of the capital. Sweetwater County's hot and gross.
Whoa. Earmuffs towards it.
Let's talk about Riverton. But you know what I mean? This is our, let it be known Representative Nicholas thinks Wyoming is too pretty. But I do think this is the opportunity to say, holy cow, these are in, this is in Laramie County, Goshen County, Platte County. I didn't know that, I think I lived in this area for 5 years before I've been to Vitaville. So I think to me, that's the real opportunity is to say, look at all these amazing sort of really wow places that are not the place, that are in the, they're in Fremont County.
How many folks who do the Capitol tour actually go down and go into any rooms in the extension?
Very few. The extension because of the statues, but the rooms themselves are now usually long, which I believe will be changed.
Yeah, Representative Nicholas, what I've seen most recently, a lot of visitors doing hasn't even just yesterday playing checkers or using the game pieces. I saw, 3 families down there. So I think that if there's more to do, it will engage longer visitation. So right now, the showpiece are the statues, the view through the dome, and having a place to sit, But if those rooms are open, I think there's more to do.
Yeah, once we have the art displays and.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, Representative. I think once we land on exactly to these 7 or 8 or whatever we got coming. To me, like we'd wanna have some of those rooms open. For visitors. It'll certainly be visited during times we have meetings, but I'm really pleased with what we have come up with for these rooms. I just think it's terrific that we're representing all the different places around Wyoming. I'm trying to process what the representative said regarding all geographic images and whatever. I'm just not sure what else you would go with. I think, and the other thing that I like is this idea of a bigger map somewhere, which identifies what those are. You know, I've got to go to that room if I want to see that red dot on the map, up in Park County, for example. I've got to go to room 3. So I'd like to kind of flesh that out a little bit, Madam Chairman, and where that map might end up, or what is the concept representative? Are you thinking one map maybe out in the hallway somewhere? Or I don't think we want a map in every room.
Well, that's what I was thinking, that you may have an understated map in a room as a key, so that I don't know how many people are gonna go from room to room, and you don't want people doing a scavenger hunt in the middle of your building, I don't think either. So having something that is subtle, maybe by the door or something that gives you a little bit of key, so they understand that this is part of a larger conversation or a larger sort of storytelling, that might be appropriate, but we would need to study it. It might make more sense to have a big central map out
So-
somewhere for people to reference.
Couple different things. We could use this one. But the computer screens and the conference rooms, they're all about this size. Aren't they?
Little bit
Little
smaller.
smaller. So when, it seems to me when the doors open, at each room, you could have kiosks, have the screen goes on, so you go in and you can sit down and get a narration, and you can get hundreds of pictures of that particular drainage. And so if you want to look at that particular drainage in that locale, you just move from room to room to see all of Wyoming on the screen, and have it and some type of a narration of some sort.
It could also be a way to have the visitor interact with it as well. So if it inspires them to go, then they can upload their photo, they can send it to a specific place, so that their photo is actually shown in the Capitol. There's also an opportunity that I think in the future, as we look at future phases and content refreshes, we could also look at what this could be on the Capitol kiosks through the building as well. So again, we don't want to show everything within the kiosk. We want to get them to go through the Capitol, but what could we show on the kiosk that might draw their attention and
I think Representative, that's a good thought, and that's where you could probably bring in all kinds of other sorts of photographs. These images, I think, are very appropriate for the meeting room. The screens could be something a little bit different. And by the way, to the subcommittee, I would say if there's an image up there that has been provided either by Cabinet or Tourism Department that we don't believe maybe measures up, I don't think we should be afraid to do what it takes to get the image that we need in that particular part of the world, whatever that might take. Maybe a donation from each of us. I don't, but I don't want to be trapped into, well, this is all we have. If it's just quite measuring up, let's not be afraid to say that. We've got lots of folks out there who have images that, anyway, go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, that's exactly for today. These are not the images you're being asked to select. It's more the locations to make sure, as Amy is going through her sources, as we're seeking photographers in Wyoming who we may be able to acquire rights at a reasonable price. The first thing is, are these 7 locations for this drainage? So for this PMR 1 would be the North Platte drainage. Are these 7 locations, Vedavoo, Laramie Plains, Lake Marie, Elk Mountain? Do these look like the images, are the locations that you like? And the images shown right now are just kind of give you a sense of that place. We may not have the rights to those yet. There may be better images based on your feedback. That'll help the DI team and Amy know which direction to pursue with this.
So our task today, or one of them, is to sort of look at that list of places and say, oh, wow, but you're missing fill in the blank, or Elk Mountain gives me hives, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It gives us stress. We have to drive through to the winter.
I don't mean that really, it's.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah, and if there's and we like to have the alternates in case we don't find the right picture for Laramie Peak, then maybe we go to Kirk County or we go to another alternative. So that's what we're
To
looking.
me, you might want to have some variety in terms of time of year.
Yeah.
All of those are the same.
Yep.
Basically.
Yeah, we are trying to look for a lot of seasonality too. So as we go through, you'll see some of that, but that is definitely the search we're in right now. And some of them we're finding that are just absolutely gorgeous, but they're astronomical in price for usage. So we're putting those over to the side and looking at what makes a lot of sense. A lot of factors come at play.
Bit of a puzzle piece.
Yeah.
Yes.
But first step is to make sure we are looking at the right locations and not, oh man, you've missed this one. And we've spent too much time looking at one that shouldn't hit the highlight list.
And Madam Chair, this happened to us. We've been working on this forever. And I was in Casper 2 weeks ago and I'm like, you guys, Ayers Bridge. Like of all the time we spent studying the North Platte, like it wasn't until I literally passed the sign when I'm like, oh, this would be a good place to think about.
No question. Yes. Some of the most beautiful panoramic shots I've ever seen or experienced are in the winter. On between Pinedale and DuBois up there in the middle of the winter is pretty spectacular. And obviously ski spots and mobile spots and all that things. So I love the idea of a rotating image. Representative just alluded to. I think that would be really.
Okay, so any other, it sounds like our main feedback so far was the locations looked okay. We didn't love the picture of Laramie Peak. And maybe more seasonal variety.
Otherwise,
And Madam Auditor, I just looked at it, though, and we don't really have a lot of wildlife in any of those. I think that if you're looking for a winter shot, some of the ducks and geese and that type of thing in Goshen County might be a good winter wildlife shot. So just think if you're up at the 2-shot this year, bring your camera, I guess.
Well, but Goose would have to fly over me at the 2-shot. For me to take a picture, but no, that's a good point.
Well, Patrick's got about a half mile of the Platte River there that has quite a few ducks and geese on it, he tells me. So we might be able to find something that kind of looks I don't know, more like a Ducks Unlimited shot, because you have a lot of tourism as far as sportsmen. And if you're looking at, going through getting tourism through different times of the year, that might be one way to do that. Have a nice shot of a elk or buffalo or something like that, or whatever it might be in some of these areas. So just a thought to tag on to the seasonality of some of those.
And Madam Chair, I can address this a little bit. One of the discussions we had about this is that a picture of an elk could be anywhere in Wyoming. So unless there's an iconic something that would connect it to that county, a picture of like a red desert elk, if you know what how a red desert elk is different from a regular elk, then that makes sense. But to just have an elk in like a room, Goshen County, of course, would be well known for pheasants. But unless you have something that distinguishes that as Goshen County, it could be anywhere in Wyoming. So that's one of the reasons we kind of stepped away a little bit from wildlife, was because it doesn't distinguish it one county from another, one drainage from another. Was one of the reasons we talked with the wildlife.
this feedback on imagery is fantastic, and great timing, because that's exactly what we're in the middle of now. I'm not hearing concerns necessarily around these 7 locations. So if everybody's comfortable, do we want to give a thumbs up on these 7 locations? And then we'll go to the next public meeting room and look at those locations as well.
I think so.
Ian, do you want to move forward to PMR 2? So this is the Green River. This is the southwest corner that we were looking at, Union 2. These are the 7 areas that we were looking at. We're going to show you some directional imagery, and then we'll go to the next slide that shows these 7 locations again, plus what could additionally be in the panel. So if you want to go to the next slide, Ian. So directionally, this is the type of imagery that's coming to the top for these locations. And again, we can consider everything that we've already talked about in terms of seasonality and iconic shots. And then if you want to go to the next slide, Ian. So knowing that in mind, these are the 7 locations on the left that we are looking for thumbs up. And then knowing in the panel that we could also bring up additional. There are a lot of locations to highlight. You have a beautiful state and a lot of places to visit. That is a good problem. How many can we fit in that panel? But the 7 on the left is really what we're looking for. Thumbs up. That these are the main ones we should focus on.
But that's a tough area. That, it's where I grew up, and I think of so many beautiful spots.
I'm happy with this list.
You know, I don't see Fremont Lake there. And I bring that up because has the distinction, or used to anyway, deepest natural lake in the lower 48 or something like that. But it's a really pretty place. Half Moon's a pretty place. But in that part of the world, you've got 759 places that you can choose, so.
When he wasn't Fremont Lake on, I know I searched for pictures.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember, it might have, I think it was on at one point. And I think we were, since we've already kind of hit with Square Top that area, I think that's the only reason, just because it's like, are we Pinedale, you could do 7 images just in the Pinedale. So I think that was the only reason Fremont Lake came off, is just to try to, when you look in that drainage, and this room is a little bit of an exception because the Bear River drainage is also there, and it's only a very minor part of Wyoming, but we wanted to hit, I think Bear River may be on there just to make sure we hit the Evanston area. Yeah, it's number 7. So I think that was the only reason, is trying to kind of spread the wealth in a drainage of.
Anyone here from Revinston?
What's that?
Anyone here from Revinston? We can skip that one.
Live stream.
That Senator Schuler also.
Might I remember that this is a live stream meeting?
But Chairman Landon, New Fork River is actually right next to Square Top. So if you're trying to disperse, Fremont Lake would actually be further away
That's true.
from Square Top than New Fork's right there.
And the picture of New Fork River is probably the least remarkable of the batch, I would say. I'm a big fan of featuring the sand dunes. Again, I think that's something even someone who born and raised in Wyoming looks at it and says, huh? Where's that beach?
And it's the largest living sand dunes in North America.
Yeah.
And the only one with its own elk herd in the world.
Well, the Green River, And then, of course, Green River Lake with Square Top and all that, that's pretty iconic. It's been on our license plate, and that's a big deal. Green River is a big part of the western part of the state, so. And kind of important to California and Arizona.
Nevada.
Okay, so am I hearing thumbs up on these 7?
With potential, we'll make a note of potential to replace Fremont.
Fremont, yeah.
I'll put it in the alternative list, so we're still looking for imagery for it, so if we need to switch something out, we can. Okay. Let's move on to 3. So this is Powder River. Here are the 7 locations. We're gonna go to the next one. This is directionally where this could go. And again, lots of searching still happening right now. But then on the left is what we're looking for, the thumbs up, and on the right, just to know that there's additional locations that we would highlight in the channel.
But Rachel, you're right, we remind you how many great places there are.
I'm also very impressed that all of you seem to know where all these spaces are and are familiar with them. I couldn't tell you what's down the street from my house. But I live in Kansas and you live in Wyoming, so yeah, a little different.
I like the picture of Pumpkin Buttes, but amongst the others, it's very dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still people.
A bit ominous.
Yeah.
Cloud cover.
I'm not hearing concern, so I'm taking that as a thumbs up.
I just wanted to throw out there. There are 3 or 4 drainages that run north out of Wyoming, which is among the only river drainages to run north in North America. Lodge grass.
Mr. Chairman, this is Tom Ray. Pumpkin Buttes is actually the divide between the Powder River and the Belle Fourche River, so it could go either side here, but we probably don't want to use it both places.
Yeah, good point, Tom. Thank you. Yeah, that I did get ahead of that. So that's getting a little hard. But it looks good.
This is Trey. Is there something in KC that we're missing that in terms of like locations to highlight?
Madam Chair, or Chairman, Senator, you know who I'm talking to. So KC is gonna be most famous for the Outlaw Canyon, like the Outlaws and the Johnson County War. And so to highlight anything specifically, KC or the Ladue family, so one that's a person we don't want to highlight. The Johnson County War, I think, is definitely something that should be on the panel location, because that's, especially if you want the current governor to approve anything from Johnson County. But I think out where the Outlaws hid is where is gonna be your best highlight for KC.
I agree.
But definitely on the panel, it's I would locate or highlight KC is where the only person that was killed where they caught the one outlaw or the one guy in the Johnson County War.
You want to participate?
Is that the governor weighing in right now?
If you ever heard the governor talk about tourism, I always place bets with anybody at my table. I say, if he doesn't bring up the Johnson County War, I'll buy the whole table a drink. And I have yet to buy anybody a drink.
The plan is to have a full story on that in Workers of History.
Yeah.
Well, this part of the world, really captured my heart. I, cowboyed up in that part of the world and guided pack trips, up into the Cloud Peak wilderness. Also had a pack trip around to, Solitude Lake. But there's an area called the Seven Brothers Lakes. And, if you hike all the way to the seventh one, there's a beach. So
That's your reward.
we're going to someday if you ever get a chance.
How are your photography skills?
Anyway, enough of it. We got a long ways to go.
Okay, so I'm hearing a thumbs up on that. So we'll keep going to number 4.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
sorry to throw a wrench in it. I know you're trying to move on. We do not have any alternates for PMR3. Is it worth discussing any alternates?
Do we want to look at the beach on the 7th Brothers?
Beach? Yeah, yeah.
Would that be a good alternate?
Senator volunteered to
Mr.
take a
Chairman,
photo for us.
maybe some more in the Cloud Peak Wilderness. We were trying to split, and Tom is our residential drainage expert of some of these rooms. You'll see like the winds, things on the east side of the winds will be featured in a different meeting room than on the west, and same thing with the bighorns. But we can probably just be sensitive to the fact that we may need some alternates in the area.
I would say we could move Lake to Smith over as an alternate, because that would be.
I was mostly just reminiscing too. I totally trust.
You can go back through all your old photos and submit something to us. We'll pay you for the rights for it if we use it.
We can get Senator Landon and the governor dressed up as cowboys on horses riding off into the sunset towards the Seven Brothers.
On the beach.
Get cowboy.
Okay, PMR number 4. There's Wind River. We have a lot of alternates for this one. I'm gonna move to the images, Ian. This is directionally where we're headed. Still have some work to do there. So you can see the 7 on the left with several alternatives, and then additional locations on the right that will be shown in the panel.
I honestly don't know where Wood River is.
I don't either. I don't know.
Madam Chair, and it's actually up above Matiti, one of my favorite camping spots growing up. So comes the Grable River, Norwood come out of there and flow into the Bighorn. Do I have that right, Tom?
Is that the one? that goes-
Wood River is different from the Norwood is on the other side of the basin from.
Okay, Norwood goes, Norwood would be with.
Norwood, I know the Norwood.
Norwood goes to Ten Sleeping.
So Grable comes down,
Is the Wood River what goes up to Kerwin?
it does.
Oh, I hunted on the Wood River. I know where that's at.
So if anyone knows Kerwin Ghost Town, that's up in the Wood River.
Yeah, I think that, one area that would lend itself to image is the Badlands east of Dubois, and I'm not sure that we have that there. We have the Crowheart and Chief Washakie country downriver there, but right up above there is that really iconic looking landscape. Boy, there again, there's a lot of really great opportunity up in that part of the world for like Warm Springs Canyon. That's kind of cool because that's where the Tydax sent all of those tides down the chute, which still exists in that canyon. Pretty cool. 20 years old.
Where was that location? Where was that location? Sorry, I was trying to.
Warm Springs.
Warm
Canyon.
Springs, okay, thanks.
Natural freeze.
And we'd probably have to call this Wind / Bighorn River. Is that okay with you, Amy and and Wendy and you guys?
And Mr. Chairman, this is a question for the subcommittee, because each of these rooms, you'll start referring to them. They will continue to be called when you stand up on the floor and announce where your committee meeting is. You will likely still say, we'll be meeting in PMR4 in the extension, but you can also add, that's the Wind River room, or that's the Bighorn River room. So we were thinking, although I'm a Bighorn Basin gal and would argue for the Bighorn Basin, Chief Washaki's statue will be right outside of that room. So in a discussion with DI, we wanted to see, we thought a shorter naming convention might be better. On the half wall panel, we'll note it's the drainage, the wind drains into the Bighorn. But we wondered, with your approval, if the Wind River might be the name for the room.
That's tough. That's too iconic.
Wendy, that's a big concession for you. Thanks. Wow.
I know, but it's up to the subcommittee, so we'll see if they would.
I would just say this,
You call it Windhorn.
I love that, but I think
We call it the Wedding of the Waters.
hopefully you hyphenate anything or put a slash in there. So I would just advocate one or the other. The headwaters or down there, that's the question. I do think that maybe Wyoming folks probably know the Wind River maybe better than the Bighorn, but maybe not.
Really personal.
What are we doing with powder?
And Madam Chair, Tom might want to talk more to this, but the powder would be the major drainage covered. We just want to make sure the tongue's included because geographically that's in that region.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh,
So
Chairman.
Tom, what are your, just out of curiosity, Mr. Ray, what is your feeling on the Wind/Bighorn River?
I guess my feeling is I'd like to see it with the slash, Wind/Bighorn. I know that seems a little awkward, but I think pretty quickly everybody would get used to it because it is the same river. It just happens to change its name when it comes out of the canyon. It's a very Western thing for a river, for the same river to have different names for its as it goes through different geographies.
Mr. Chair, the one thing to consider about that area, the Wind River would also give a nod to the reservation, and that is reservation land up there.
Mm-hmm.
What's the Northeast River?
The Belle Fourche.
That would be better than Northeast.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, that's kind of part of it too, is they're based generally on the Wyoming Water Development offices. They actually have 7 regions when you include the Bear, and you're right, the Northeast is actually called that, and it has several drainages in it. So part of this is trying to kind of generally geographically name these rooms that are roll off the tongue easy when you're announcing your meeting.
Well, it shouldn't be Northeast. If we're gonna do rivers or drainages, this is the only one that doesn't do that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe that's the Belle Fourche is what it's named as when we get to that room.
So
That is, what's the next? What's that?
I'm just looking at the
the
map.
topic at hand, has there been any consideration given, and I appreciate Tom's thoughts on the slash in the middle. I don't like slash in the title, but have we thought about maybe the Boyson room or the Owl Creek room, or we married to the Wind River/Bighorn River? Just throw that out. Is that gonna be more comfortable going forward and easier to refer to a room instead of being the Wind River/Bighorn River room number 4?
And this is the only room that you really have that issue in. The rest of them really are the major river for that drainage. So I think this is just the one of, to Tom's point, it's the same it's the same major river in that drainage. It just changes names.
We know exactly where it does, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So I think I agree with the co-chairman that we need to go with one or the other.
I just think Wind River Room, I like the non-food reservation. Sure.
And on the powder, I would just have the powder.
We love all the rest of your recommendations, Tom, just so you know.
No, that's fine, whatever you guys want to do.
That's kind of where I land, committee, I prefer.
Which river's longer, the Wind River or the Bighorn?
Yeah, I don't know. I think probably the Bighorn. Goes all the way to the Yellowstone in Montana.
Which river is wider?
Probably the further down you go, so that would be the Bighorn too.
Let's get out of here on that.
7 locations. We obviously have a lot of alternatives, and then we'll stay with Wind River. Is that what I'm
Yes.
hearing? Perfect. Okay. Move on to the next one. Here are the 7 locations. Northeast corner of Wyoming. Here's directionally where we're going with imagery.
She just emailed that to you.
And the 5 or 7 locations on the left. An alternative. And then the locations that we can highlight on the right. Want to throw out some fighting words about any area here?
For the panel locations to highlight, there's some, between Newcastle and Sundance, there's some of those old mining towns that are, there's a whole tour, like drive tour that talks about the old mining towns. I just think to give a nod to that area, they would appreciate that because they're one of the areas that always feels very underrepresented.
Have a name.
So are we gonna?
It probably does. I'll get it to you.
We're gonna get the sign up on the middle tower and then have to change it next year? Is that what I'm reading?
No, we're not active Congress.
Yeah. Without a resolution from the legislature.
So we can add that to the location. Is everybody comfortable with the 7 that we've highlighted?
Not totally overwhelmed by the Sundance Mountain picture compared to some of the others.
Yeah, we'll keep looking for that.
I have a winter painting of it.
Black Hills are extraordinary. Lots of great images.
I think the locations are fine.
So I was curious when you mentioned earlier that there's some spectacular pictures, but they can get kind of expensive. And I'm just curious if they're approached right, and if we know who they are, then we might, the state of Wyoming could approach them and saying, we'd like to have these just for this room, for this purpose, and happy to identify the artist.
Yeah, we will definitely keep those over to the side and not throw them out. So if there's any strings that can be pulled, we will definitely use that.
Yeah, so we need to know who or what you're talking about. And what we're gonna do.
Yeah, so that'll probably be the next round. So if there's images that we don't like within a particular area, and we show that there's another one, but it's quite pricey, then yeah, we see who has any connections. That's a great point.
Some of this is a bit turning over every rock in the state to find, because we can find the photo, but we have to dig pretty deep to find the photographer. And that's been a bit of a struggle for us, is just to track down the photographer. Some of them may be out shooting, some of them may be retired, some of them may be, not with us any longer. We're kind of doing a broad internet search to find the images, and then trying to find the photographers and then trying to get the conversation going with the rights, but I think. Yeah, if you guys are willing to jump in when appropriate, when we start talking about the financial discussion for it.
I think the idea is we would love to feature a piece of your work.
Yeah.
Capital, and that's how that's presented.
Yep.
So I agree with the representative, and I think this committee or some of us would be happy to help in any way, but I think it's worth it. These rooms are gonna be spectacular with finishing up.
That plane is called Cambria, Cambria.
What is that? I mean,
It's
sorry.
Cambria. It's the, it was a coal mine in that
Oh,
in
the-
Weston County that has a ton of history.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just off the highway between Newcastle and
Cambria.
Sunnyvale.
Great.
All right, everybody good? Moving to PMR 6. So this is Snake River, northwest area. Here's our main locations. And then alternatives. Ian, if you want to go to some of the imagery that we were looking at. Again, on the left, our top.
Not much to work with up there.
That one was tough.
Yeah, that's good. Rough to find anything up in that part.
So we are, obviously you see the Tetons and Yellowstone. We are gonna, spoiler alert, we're looking at those iconic ones for the auditorium that we're gonna hit next. So the images that we're looking for in this area are really the less iconic images from the area. Yeah, hideous area. Such a beautiful state.
If it were me, I'd keep Yellowstone out of it. The Snake River actually starts in the very southern part of Yellowstone. And I think just let Yellowstone be its own thing in the iconic room and don't try to tie it into that river. I mean, that's my opinion, but
And Madam Chair, it was actually not to show the iconic shots as Rachel mentioned. So I think in Yellowstone, it was looking at like the, I'm trying to remember, Tom, you might have to tell me what some of those rivers are that would be part of the green, but flow through Yellowstone. So not the geyser pictures or.
Right, the Snake River, yeah, yeah. Henry, what is it called? Henry Lake and that fall near the south entrance. Waterfall. That's a great winter picture of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. That's really a cool picture.
Yeah, I really like that one. That's why I'm hesitant to exclude Yellowstone completely.
no, I just mean from, actually, the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone doesn't flow into the Snake River at all.
That's true, yeah, right.
That shouldn't be in there. So I'm not excluding Yellowstone. I'm just saying leave Yellowstone into the scenic.
Yeah.
Into our iconic auditorium room. Because a lot of Yellowstone does not drain into the Snake River. It's not even the right.
Exactly. So I think maybe some of these images, like the one number, image number 1 and image number 2 shouldn't have been shown here because they're kind of the iconic shots. So it was the ones that relate to the green that would be, or sorry, the Snake, thank you, Snake River that would be lesser known, but may happen to encompass some of the parks themselves.
And that was the test and you both passed. So Ian, if you want to move to the next slide. So if we, again, looking at what we have for alternates, so if we're not finding imagery that we feel is, if we feel like the imagery that we're finding for 1 and 2 for Tetons and Yellowstone is getting too iconic, then we can look at those alternatives.
This is a very weird thing, but like the Grand is the very iconic Teton. Oxbow Bend with Mount Moran is not, and I mean, you could put that Snake River Teton with Mount Moran on it because it's not the iconic Grand or Cathedral group. So that's how you kind of differentiate like iconic versus So there's a way to still do the snake with the Tetons, just not the iconic shots.
Thank you. Knowing Amy will be our guide on that, does everybody feel comfortable with this direction and these 7 primary locations?
Nice work.
Okay, so we're gonna move to the auditorium. So we had decided for PMRs 1 through 6, we were gonna look at some of them that were, again, less iconic. But Capitol Auditorium is where we want those icons to really shine. So when we look at that, we will have the imagery in there, and we will also have another panel. We're looking at 3 images of Grand Tetons, 3 for Yellowstone, and 2 for Devil's Tower. So we've got several images that we already have started to look at, so we'll go through those. I don't think there's probably too much discussion on or debate on if these are the right icons to show in the area.
I don't understand, you're doing 3 for Yellowstone and 3 for National Grand Teton National Park.
And only 2 for Devil's Tower, or?
Well, I would only do 1 for Devil's Tower. I mean, we've got some incredibly beautiful mountains in the winds and in other places that are iconic. So.
Okay.
It would, to me, I don't know, that's my thought. It's too repetitious for having 3 big pictures of the Tetons.
I would maybe agree with that.
Okay.
Gannett Peak.
Frankly, Yellowstone can be pretty boring. It's just timber and lakes.
And things that go boom.
You know, herds of elk or herds of herds of buffalo or something.
From those of us from Kansas and Missouri, that doesn't sound too boring, but we'll take it. Do you think we can agree on what this list would be if we want to extend the list beyond these 3?
I would add Fossil Butte National Monument.
We've actually, I think, did we have a shot at that? I think we have that covered in.
What did you just say?
Fossil Butte National Monument. It's really the only other national monument we have in the state. Well, I guess we have Fort Laramie. It's not a national monument. It's Fort Laramie National Monument. North side. But Fossil Butte is a national monument, much like Devil's Tower.
Trying to think if I've ever saw a really super picture of Fossil Butte.
If you just, one of the fossils is like that, you know, they have this big fossil fit. That's what you would use. It's just
I would say maybe circa the towers.
Yeah, the cirque would be great.
That's really stunning, and I mean, people come from all over the world. And if we're just looking for things to add, since we're not featuring Forest Pass in the southwest Wyoming, that one's pretty iconic. Yellowstone is pretty boring. We should put that on.
oh, I recorded it. It's already out on Cowboys TV Lane. Representative Nichols is quoted as saying.
I don't know if you've ever driven I-70 from Kansas City to Denver, but everything boring.
I would also, for the Yellowstone shots, just make sure we're highlighting Old Faithful geysers. I mean, it's the Grand Canyon is important, but what makes Yellowstone unique is that there's only 900 thermal features in the entire world, and over half of them reside in Yellowstone National Park. So that's what sets Yellowstone. I mean, besides its okay scenery, the Grand Canyon and the wildlife, really that's the scientific, that's the, I mean, it's the caldera, the significance of, but we have, you cannot highlight Yellowstone without including either like the Old Faithful for sure, and the Mammoth Towers or Mammoth Terraces are pretty.
So DI, are you needing us to maybe react to the collage of Teton pictures to say which ones?
Not yet, it's
Not
really
yet,
the
okay.
list, so, but Ian, if you wanna hit each of those, just yeah, kind of quickly. So Grand Tetons, this is the directions. We do have variety of different, angles and types here. Yellowstone, a variety.
I could see having a couple pictures from Yellowstone. I tend to agree that we probably don't need multiple pictures of Devil's Tower or of the Tetons.
Okay, so if we did double.
I'm just sitting here trying to think of if we were gonna take the top 6 or 7 images, for example, out of Wyoming. We've hit on almost every one of them, but I think Fremont Canyon is a consideration. We've got the one that shoots down into the canyon, but that's a pretty spectacular place. Wind River Canyon, that's a pretty spectacular place too, but I like the idea of the auditorium having a little bit of variety.
Okay.
A couple of Yellowstones, 1 or 2 Tetons, but let's get some of the other, just to balance things out.
Okay. So if
That
we
was our
had,
list.
8, so we had 1 from Devil's Tower, 1 from Tetons, 2 from Yellowstone, Fremont Canyon, Fossil Butte, Circuit Towers, Boar's Tusk.
That's a good start.
Like, if you look at all the pictures we've looked at. That you have, we just go to the most spectacular pictures. Because that's what we want.
Yeah.
And Madam Chair, it might be also that as they start looking at photo acquisition, for example, if there's only one really good one of Fremont Canyon, you might want to choose to put that in, trying to remember which North Platte, the North Platte room. So it might be that DI is really trying to find broader than just national sites in the auditorium, but the great money shots throughout the state. But if there's only one and it's representative of that geography, they may need to use it in that room.
I agree.
And that's where we ran. Like the Wind River Canyon is one of my favorite drives in the entire state. It is not an easy one to get a picture of because of the way it winds. Cars, you have the railroad tracks, you have the highway.
You can't capture.
Yes, and yeah, so there's things.
Well, and you gotta get on a boat if you really wanna see Fremont Canyon. You
Yeah.
can look down in it, but from below, it's pretty spectacular. And
I'd be happy to go out and get those. And we may have some shots. We just got assets from there, so we may have some.
not a big deal, but it's, we've already mentioned fossil fuels and some others. I just think some variety in that auditorium will really make it.
Okay. This is great discussion. Thank you all very much.
If you want to switch back to the Teton slide really quick. Just so when you guys
Go to
are looking.
Tetons.
One more.
I think it was, go back 1 or 2 to the Tetons. I think it was the first one.
So those 2 that are on the top. To the left with the river, that's Mount Moran. Just so when you guys are looking at it, you know what you're looking at. That's Moran versus the one with the sunset. That's gonna be the Cathedral Group or the Grand. The Grand's the really pointy tall one. And that's what you're gonna wanna feature as your icon. That's what the Office of Tourism features as our iconic. When we do the Tetons, we do the Grand because that's what's recognizable.
Well, now that you probably have 2 more citizens because this was all very beautiful. Let's move on to the next topic, if everybody is good with that. Okay, so within, we do a little show and tell. So we have, we looked at different, so we looked at different frame options and mat options. So we've got a sample here of what the core team and DI recommend to be the frame for that area or for all of these images. That's what Rihanna is getting up and looking at. Ian, if you want to talk through the frame and mat.
Happy to. So we are looking at 2 different ways to integrate photo and label into these frames. There are two options that we have at play. This first option is looking at including a mat to integrate the photo and the ID label inside of the frame. The mat elevates the images, and it's a bit more of a classic way to display these photos. It also helps bring together different colored images to be just a little bit more aligned aesthetically. The second option is to remove the mat and have the images fully fill the frame, and then we would have a small label on the wall underneath it. This is to allow the images to be as large as possible to really let them sing. So I'm skipping over the dark frame, but I can go back and talk about that if we would like. But wanted to put the two options side by side. Representative Sherwood, I see that your hand is raised.
Thank you so much. So I'm a big fan of mats because it gives the eye a place to rest. And so going way back to earlier in the conversation about Representative Nicholas' concern about the colors and maybe it being too busy, the mat allows that resting of the eye between the images, right? And then having the label incorporated in the mat in the frame is less maintenance. Like if somebody accidentally scuffs their, purse up against the wall and scrapes that label off, easy peasy, streamlined mat all the way for this girl.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy, you got it.
I like the way the non-matte looks, but I really do like the way the matte brings together the sort of divergent colors. And again, my knee-jerk reaction was that the oh my gosh, I just lost the word. The label. That's one more thing to be crooked or to fall off or to it's sort of nice and seamless with the mat.
And the color of the label that's inset in that frame does not have to be that dark color that's shown. It does call a lot of attention to itself. So we should also look at what that final color is, so it falls away more.
So Ian, I love the frame, and I'm listening to the professionals and with regard to the mat, my first reaction to the left side there was that's an awful lot of white. But I totally get where Representative Sherwood's coming from. So yes, I would be good either way, and subcommittee, I'm kind of looking around here.
Can we have an option of having about half that matting? So reduce
We
the.
could pull the matting down, yes, a little bit. There's no magic number
I would
there.
agree with that. I think it is pretty thick.
Yes.
I would tend to agree with Representative Sherwood. I would be really hesitant to do a full bleed photograph in that frame. It's kind of a more traditional formal frame, and I think it's a more contemporary style of framing to take that photo all the way to the edge. The mat, I think, fits the style a little bit better. And the images are already quite large. So I mean, I think maybe in this picture it could make that image seem small on that back wall, but with the three feet or something across in the frame. So there's even with a thick mat, they're gonna be quite substantial. So I wouldn't be worried about that.
Mr. Chairman, I had kind of the same thought about the whiteness, but I swung the other way, but I also realized that on those two photos on the right, the sky is pretty light colored, and the way it's portrayed here makes it kind of like adds more white that might not actually be there. So.
So it sounds like everybody likes the frame and that we will go with the matte version from hearing that we will look at the thickness of the mat. and decrease the thickness of it, and we'll work on what that looks like. We'll work with the core team to get that to the right mix. Okay. They hanging in there okay? Good to keep going? Okay, now look at conference rooms next.
We didn't talk about frames.
Oh, I thought everybody liked the frame. Let's go back to the frame, sorry.
Two options. We discussed the two.
Yeah, we looked at the differences between the ornate and we actually looked at it in a couple different ways and touch and feel what it looks like by itself, and then really putting it up in the rooms. So we did a little study on that actually yesterday and really gravitated, I think the core team really gravitated towards this particular frame. And it actually does tie in a little bit to the composite frames that are outside of those rooms as well.
So it's the one on the left.
On the left, yep, and right in the middle.
In the middle?
Yeah,
Is the left the
these two were the same, these two were the same. And the
I
right,
don't understand that. I don't see it in these pictures. Because you have the bottom thicker than sides. And that's not on the pictures that you have in your illustrations. That changes it'd be nice to see this picture with those frames.
yeah, and it would be that one, that is the sample, so we can make sure it's that's the right thickness that.
Okay, so that's the wrong. This center.
I think it's just the angle of the photo.
Yeah,
It's the same thickness all.
yeah.
That would, okay, thank you.
All right. Conference rooms. Okay, so move forward with right. That sounds great. Okay. For the conference rooms, so last time that we talked about the conference rooms, we talked about the overall goals, really again, tourism, but really focusing on the state symbols of Wyoming. So we talked about really installing a full graphic, highlighting that symbol within each of those rooms and making sure that that symbol has significance within that overall imagery. So today, we are looking for the wall graphic approval and that symbol imagery approval. And each of those rooms had already been established, that we looked at the flower, the mammal, the tree, the grass, and the bird. So you are going to see each of those as we go through room by room. Ian?
Yes, I want to, before I pull up the image treatments, the one thing I want to confirm is that following this discussion, we will then confirm exactly which wall these wall graphics will be applied to. And then once we have those walls selected, we will do one last review of which symbols are in which room. As I click through, we have images with treatments for review and approval, and then we've dropped in one of the options in different rooms just to sort of show the sorts of walls that we have to work with. Some are completely open, some have screens or doors. So looking to sort of make sure that we are putting the right types of images on the right walls. So we are certainly going to try to keep them in these rooms as listed, but once we do the larger holistic review, we're just going to confirm that those do make the most sense. So this was an example of sort of where we were at previously with the wall graphic and the artifact label on top of it. So we taking the feedback that we had from the previous subcommittee meetings and working closely with your core team, we came up with these two options for wall graphic treatments. So this top image was the starting image, no color application, no treatment applied. The two options are the entire image is full vibrancy. The saturation is all there, including both the symbol and the background. And then we looked at, for the two options, lightening the background. So the symbol is a little darker to sort of pop off from the lighter background. So as you can see, the trees in the background still have that full vibrancy, but it's a little more muted to allow the darker symbol to come forward. Wanted to stop me at any point. These are the starting images with no treatments. Then treatment option 1. We have a couple of different ways that we are visualizing this. So I might continue to click through, and then we can pop back to whichever slides we feel work best to discuss. Treatment option 1. Treatment option 2 with that even more pulled back background treatment. And then starting to look at, here is the image in a room example with the 2 options side by side. And then we have that for each photo. So this bird is a great example of a wall with a large screen trying to fill the wall in a way that utilizes what's going on the best. So tucking that little buddy over to one side. Same thing here.
I think these look awesome, and I lean towards option 1. I feel like option 2 washes out the background too much.
I agree. I agree.
I agree, especially on the Indian paintbrush one. If you lose the Indian paintbrush on those options 2 and 3, it's very.
What's that?
On the Indian paintbrush one, it looks weird, like it's not. Like the Indian paintbrush looks like it was stuck on top of it, or.
I
think so.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I would,
2 and 3.
I would say that on all of these, option 1 with where you have animals, the bison and the meadowlark, but probably no treatment when you've just got vegetation. It just seems kind of out of place to draw attention to vegetation over vegetation. It does seem in place to maybe have the meadowlark and the bison stand out.
So I'm the ball humbug about this again. The various places where I've been, where you have a full wall painting like that, it's just in those rooms that I've sat in, they get old quick. You get really tired of them by half the day, and they just kind of dominate, and they're not. Pictures aren't fine enough to really be that dramatic, and so I don't like them at all. So I wouldn't do them, but what I would suggest is we do 1 or 2 and see if we like them before we throw everything at the wall. And, of the ones there, I like the tree on the right, left, and upper, and the tetons on the upper right. And particularly on the smaller rooms, that just thing, you show those examples of the rooms, it will just dominate the whole time. I don't see anybody jumping on this train with me.
No, I really like them, and some of these rooms are just so cold and unwelcoming, and I think I would like, I think part of that is that's why we're pulling back the color on some of the background, but gosh, they're cold, windowless, small, especially a couple of them. I mean, they need a little something. I think these are really great.
A little something, but not a lot of something.
Well, it's one wall, it's an accent wall.
You know, I've got to confess, I'm with the co-chairman. I'm looking at that wall, for example. And you put that bird over there on the right-hand side, and an image right there, you still have the entire rest of this place, which without some kind of image is pretty cold. I mean, we're downstairs, we don't have any windows. I guess I lean toward, I think maybe that's a good suggestion, Madam Chairman, that we take a look at a couple. You know, see how they hold up or see how they look and go from there. But I lean toward the images. What subcommittee, what do you think? Who?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I love the wall murals because I think if you spend 4 hours at a legislative hearing or some other meeting, it's nice to have that, something like that. That again, they are windowless and fairly sterile otherwise. So I'm all for it.
Gotta make sure that people don't have magic markers when you come into the room.
They'll screen them.
They're scrubbable. We'll just make them wash them.
Yeah, Amy, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm a fan of the images. You know, I think about the museum classroom that we have meetings in quite a bit and doesn't have big wall murals like this, but there's a lot of stuff. There's dead animals all over the place. What it mostly is. But honestly, we have people trying to book meetings in there constantly and we have to turn them away because it's mostly for student groups. But I think having something of interest, if you're going to be sitting in a long meeting is beneficial.
I agree. I like I mean, even sitting in here all day, like you have green dots on the wall. And I think I like that it highlights our symbols. It's a place that we highlight who we are as Wyoming and things that are important to us. But then again, I don't know how long you guys are sitting in these rooms. And I don't know if I was sitting in a room for 8 hours staring or having a bison stare at me all day, if it would get old quick. I don't know. I like that it brings life to the room. I like that it brings like light, it brings more to the room than just a plain conference room.
Just real quick, and DI, you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is a pretty low cost option that's easily changeable also in the future if we decided that it was way too much a couple years from now, then it's a pretty easy change at a low cost.
Well, and I think about these rooms, it's not so much legislative hearings, I mean, it is, and no offense to any of the meetings I attend in some of these, but usually pretty dry, 3 to 4, Kevin knows what I'm talking about. Pretty dry, 3 to 4 hour meetings that are, you know, once every couple of months, you know, so it's not like you're in. These aren't super, or, you know, 53, 54, it's all the luncheons, you know, to me, this is an appropriate treatment for those to elevate them a little bit at a lower cost and lower risk than sort of formal artwork.
Representative, normally we are right with you. So it looks like maybe not this time. I think the subcommittee likes the images. I'm kind of with the co-chairman. I like option 1, I think, where we pop the image a little bit and drop the background. But anybody adamantly opposed to that idea? So I think that's where we're at.
Number 1, and go ahead and move forward with all of them. Wonderful. All right. Okay, so next on our list, don't be cringe. We're gonna make this fun, but we've got some more naming exercises.
How are we, let's see, sorry,
We're like 10 minutes behind.
how's everybody doing as far, do we want to take a brief break? Or do we want to maybe get through this agenda item? Break. Thoughts, Tara? That, okay, let's go ahead and get through this and then we can ponder names.
You teased it. They're very excited about it.
I know, guys, maybe.
Oh,
This
great.
could be great.
Can't wait.
So we've gone through several different areas where we've had naming exercises. Champs have come up with some great ones in the past, and you've come up with a couple great ones today. So just as a reminder, when we're looking at naming for these activations, we want it to be succinct and we want it to be clear. And we also want to pique curiosity so that we're drawing people to it. We've got 3 areas that we're looking at. We've got the interactive constitution, we've got the timeline interactive, and then we've got the staged vault. So we're gonna start with the constitution interactive. You're going too fast, Ian. You're giving away my names. So as a reminder, the Constitution Interactive will be within the historic Supreme Court. We are still working on the final design for this piece, but this is probably the last version that you saw. So just a reminder. So within this activation, you will be able to have a digital replica of what the Constitution looks like. We will highlight specific areas of interest, things that are different or the same compared to the US Constitution. There's several different things that we would be able to look at, that the user would be able to look at in this space. Okay, now you can showcase the names in. So we have 4 different options to look at. We looked at it from a lot of different angles and really like where they landed. So the first 2, Wendy did a great job of kind of reminding, let's get back to the core of the Constitution. So our recommend, or the top option, I would say, is We the People. That is in the Wyoming Constitution, as well as equality of all. I really like that, again, given equality states.
I'm not sure I understand. When you say, what are we naming? Renaming
The actual interactive, the actual activation. So we're gonna say, hey, you should check out is it the interactive constitution? Is it, just tell them to go see
we're
this
talking about
thing,
the box.
to interact with.
Mr. Chairman, and the reason why you're being presented these options is if you review the final content, a lot of it is breadcrumbing the visitor of don't miss out on XYZ. And so as that gets ready to go into production and fabrication, we need to name these. And so that's the essence. These are coming to you in package 3 as the digital activations. But in order for them to be highlighted in the static exhibits, we need you to decide on a name. And so we've been kind of just calling them, for lack of a better term, what they are, but thinking that there might be a better way to pique interest. And so that's the purpose. As you review the content, it'll be like, learn more about our Constitution on the 2nd floor, or interact with the We the People Constitution, or something along those lines.
So I guess my question so we referred to this exhibit and the static exhibit. I need help understanding how we would do that, because you almost still have to say Constitution Interactive. Because if you just say, go look at We the People.
I think the breadcrumb, Madam Chair, would say something, we might be able to even pull up the exact language, but it says, be sure to visit on the 2nd level, the We the People exhibit, to learn more about our Constitution. So it's kind of having a name for it, but the context still tells you what it is.
We also have options in here that fall in how we've done some other naming. So the Capitol Kiosk, so we have the Capitol's Constitution, or very clearly it's Constitution Corner. So we've got different angles to approach it.
I really like the reference Wendy just made. That flowed really well, and it just feels like that's something you could do. Check out the We the People interactive exhibit on the 2nd floor. But that's kind of where I'm at.
So the problem with that is that We the People is basically the US.
It is.
So that's just confusing. And it's not the first words. So the equality of all really doesn't, that's just pointing equality. It's not talking about our Constitution.
Given that, Representative, what about the Constitution kiosk or
just the Constitution?
Constitution Interactive?
Because it's not the capital, the Constitution doesn't belong to the capital, so I don't understand the capital's Constitution, that doesn't make sense.
Mr. Chair, I'd also distinguish it Wyoming Constitution, because if you just say the Constitution in
Yeah.
the United States, the Constitution.
Yeah, it's probably Wyoming's Constitution.
What I also liked about We the People, is I think there's enough civic knowledge for that We the People does immediately make you think of Constitution. So I get the national, but it is the Wyoming Constitution as well. So that's why I personally gravitated towards We the People, because I do think it says Constitution without having to say it. See your point.
I'm not crazy about Constitution Corner. These are considered kiosks, are they not? If we gravitated there, I would be more in favor of just calling it the Constitution Kiosk. The Capitol Constitution, I don't, that doesn't fit for me, and the equality of all does not roll off the tongue very well. When you're trying to. So that's my take on it. Chairman.
I mean, I go back to some of the naming conversations we have, I mean. And I'm picturing a docent saying, oh, you should go visit our Constitution Interactive. Right, because and if they say you should go visit We the People. It's a Constitution Interactive, but you about have to, which is real. I mean, I get it's real boring, but it's, if we have to say that to explain what it is regardless, then the purpose of the name is unclear.
So, yeah, and I'm curious, what the public, what do you do? I'd like to hear from the professionals, so what rolls off better? I mean, the idea is to get them to go there. How are you gonna present that better?
And Mr. Chairman, I think you're right that they'd always qualify what it is, but I think it's the idea of trying to build up the idea that there's these exhibits that are their own experience is the reason for the naming, and I might actually defer to DI for that discussion about trying to make it's not just the room you're going to, but there's an experience you could have in the room. Maybe it's the Constitution experience. I mean, maybe that would be a name. So that they understand there's something special to do in that space.
Yeah, a special name does make it more of a destination. I think we just said that too, yeah, Constitution experience. If we elevate it, it's not just an interactive, it's an experience.
So can you say Constitution display?
Display denotes a little bit more of a static thing. This is interactive, so using a word like kiosk or experience or something like that does seem to denote that when you're referring to it outside of that space. Once you're in that space, you're gonna kind of get it, but like we are talking about trying to get something, trying to find the balance, right? You're trying to not oversell it, so like if I'm not like hyper analyze this, which I guess this is what we're doing. The experience seems to be like it is a kiosk. It is not, you're not coming into a room this size and being overwhelmed by an experience like you would if you went to Meow Wolf or someplace like that. It is a kiosk. No. The Constitution kiosk seems to, it rhymes, it it rolls off the tongue well, like that seems to be something where you could, point them to, not just a room, but like you do want to mildly brand each one of the activities in the room so that you can point them to, instead of, saying drive to Cheyenne, you're now saying drive to Main Street and you're going to this, you know, you're giving an exact address on something. So if you're outside of the room and you have a docent trying to describe where to go, not only go to like the room that it's in, but also this activity that you want to do. You know, I would advocate for having a little bit of a brand to it, not just like it being a random kiosk, you know, activity in there. So.
Would it be accurate to call it a virtual constitution?
For a living constitution.
Yeah.
That's good.
What's all gonna be on the display? Other than the Constitution.
It's mostly the Constitution. We're gonna try to get specific pages in there so that it is the digital version of it, on one side, and then the other side we'll be able to interact with it more and call out the specifics of it. So there's, I don't know yet what stories we're gonna call out, but the left side will be the Constitution and right might pull out different story elements of it that'll have different things beyond the Constitution.
So it's kind of a historical constitution versus.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, similar to a lot of your digital activations, and you might remember, we've gotten pretty far on package 3, which are the digital activations before we wrapped up these, but where you were at with it is you will basically be purchasing X number of activations within that kiosk as part of this scope of work, but it is scalable. So for example, the 250th semi-sesquicentennial of the United States is coming up. And it's something that for that event, you could do a little compare and contrast of the Wyoming and US constitutions. So it is definitely something that can evolve, and you could add stories to it that maybe more recent changes, the Wyoming water law, suffrage, permanent mineral trust fund, as an example of how to amend the Constitution, or some of the ideas that you discussed earlier as highlighting on that interactive screen.
So back to Rick, I appreciated your thoughts. I think there's some alliteration with Constitution kiosk, and that's the reason I threw that out there. And I'm having trouble beating that in my mind. That's really how you're going to direct somebody to that. It seems to me. You can interject the word interactive too, but
I feel like kiosk.
Kiosk doesn't, yeah.
yes, it says to me that that's an interactive experience. So I'm not sure you have to get beyond that, but I'm sure willing to go with the subcommittee here. I don't think the 4 on the screen get it for me yet, but I do think that Constitution kiosk would be pretty decent. What does anybody else think?
I think I think that's fine and it's accurate. And I just fear, and I know we went through the same thing, I think with this room, we came up with, 400 other really great names. And then we were like, we're gonna keep calling it the student learning center because it is a student. So,
Yeah, my only thought on kiosk is just from a docent standpoint, because there will be the capital kiosks throughout. So making sure to differentiate the capital kiosk from the constitutional kiosk, that would be my only concern with calling it a kiosk. I like the idea of virtual, but I wonder if you go too far to like virtual reality and it may oversell what it is. But I like where you're going with that.
well, I'm trying to capture the under 15 set with cyber constitution.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
I don't know.
Yeah, keep up.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't do kiosk, I just would want to make sure that when there's communication to the visitor, that's clear.
So Rachel, your point is that we're gonna have a capital kiosk down outside the rotunda, right?
There's several of them that are gonna be throughout the capital.
There's gonna be several of them, and those are capital kiosks. Okay, that's a good reminder. I hadn't thought of that. So is there enough delineation there between capital kiosk and Constitution kiosk? That
Markedly different in their design. There is some kind of the kiosk and it being a visual of like what they are, the Capitol kiosk looking similar to the constitutional kiosk, like that's, in my opinion, that's okay. It does simplify things for docents, users, et cetera, to know that if I'm in my mind's eye looking for a kiosk, then I know what I'm looking at. They're all sort of similar in style, design, and function, then that seems to start to make a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
I think the point was well taken, that the we the people tends to lead me in the direction of national. On the other hand, if the subcommittee feels like that, but you're still, if you're directing somebody to the we the people, you're still gonna have to add something, right? You're still gonna have to say the we the people thing. And so that's my only caution with going with the equality of all or we the people, or because like the co-chairman pointed out, you still have to call it what it is.
Well, and this is only short term, but we also have the We the People program here.
Oh, yeah. Very popular, probably gonna be around for a while.
So I'm looking at synonyms. You got constitutional cubicle, constitutional corner, or constitutional counter, constitutional rotunda, constitutional booth. Not much out there. It's kiosk.
I'd also
Sounds
say,
like we're all least offended by constitutional kiosks. So good.
Boy, I tell you what, that's the best I can come up with today. I'm sorry about that.
I just think distinguish it with Wyoming in front of it. Like, I think it needs to be the Wyoming constitutional kiosk, so they know what they're, just from a tourism perspective, because if I saw the constitutional kiosk, I'd be like, why do I want to go look at the United States Constitution?
Well, I
Wyoming
think
Capitol.
in this application, it says something like, to learn more about Wyoming's constitution, go visit the Constitution kiosk. So that, at least in that application, it would be.
And I was also gonna say, if I saw something about We the People or was directed to go see We the People, I'd be looking for stories of people in Wyoming.
Maybe we should have named the vault experience that.
So do we want to go with Capitol kiosk? Is that what I'm hearing?
Constitution.
Constitutional kiosk.
Yeah, we already
Oh.
have.
Good job. We were almost there.
Okay, constitutional kiosk. There we go.
Yeah, I do like the idea of when, so that would be the more informal name that like the docents would use and such, but like if we were referring to it in copy or in the breadcrumbs, is that maybe we do officially brand it as the Wyoming Capitol or constitutional kiosk. I mean,
Put it in your head.
we may just want to study that. Like we may want to, when
Okay.
we write it, be more official with it than when we're speaking in the common vernacular around the building. It's okay to call it the constitutional kiosk, but when we're writing it into the breadcrumbs, we might want to call it the Wyoming. Just to make sure that we're differentiating properly, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. 1 out of 3. Good job. Okay, now let's go to number 2. Okay, this is for the timeline interactive. So this will be decade by decade. This is really the progress and what has been done to the People's House. So that's the interactive that's going to be here. So the more rectangular version, that will be the interactive portion. And then there's a wall panel that will be beside it, will help set it up and so users understand. So we've got 3 names that we were looking at for the timeline interactive. We really liked Foundations of Progress that was brought up by the core team. Building the Future, or again, to stick with the capital blank, the capital timeline.
So my question is,
all we're referring to are those two panels.
The interactive that you will be able to slide through and look back and dive into stories and then the panel beside it.
So you have a kiosk plus that panel that's on page.
It's on page 85, yeah. I guess from well, Rick, you can correct me. Technically, I don't know that I would call it a kiosk. And I'm hoping I'm not saying that just because I don't want to keep saying kiosk, but.
No, I'd agree.
Okay.
I said it's
With it being
it's
on
a
a wall.
wall mounted display, so a kiosk is usually something that is sort of freestanding and in the middle of a room, which is what we were talking about with the other things.
Well, my point is there'd be a kiosk nearby. Right around the corner.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, though, the kiosk will be when you come in from one of the garden entrances. And this experience is down the hall outside of the IT suite, and it's a touch screen where visitors will be able to interact and scroll through it. So I think it's a little bit different because it's wall mounted, so they'll go up and they'll be able to touch it and interact with it.
So remind me which wall,
So it's across, if you're going in the garden, LSO's main office, it's gonna be on the left wall. Where the double doors are, it's on that left completely blank wall, and across on the other side is the exhibit casework that we currently have, the story about the
so
architecture.
you're in the garden.
Correct, this is in the garden level.
Yeah, so I know where it's at. So
And Mr. Chairman, as a reminder, it's similar to what you toured at the Gateway Center that had a timeline. But the Gateway Center staff said their recommendation would be not to have a timeline that is static, but to do one that's digital. And so that's where DI adopted this as a digital points in time that also reference the periods of construction of the Capitol, but that can have many other Wyoming stories related to them.
So going back to my first question, then the whole thing is 10 feet offline, right?
Yes.
But it's interactive through time. And how much information will be on that? I mean, my question is, how thorough or detailed is the timeline? I mean, is it a true historical timeline or more just a point in time, 7 slides kind of a thing?
Just remember the number.
Currently, we have scope that we would put together 15 different stories, but just like the other kiosks, the structure is built so that you can add as many stories as you want. So there'd be, if I'm remembering that correctly, because we're looking at 15 decades and multiple stories that you can dive in further for each of those decades.
That just helps for naming it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think the top suggestion really speaks to me. It's pretty close to what this is gonna be. For the record.
So that means it's going to be called the Foundation of Progress Interactive.
Ian, if you want to go to the next slide.
Foundations of Progress
Thank
panel
you.
on the garden level.
And Mr. Chairman, same thing, all of these are pretty much just referenced as breadcrumbs, so the rest of the sentence is what gives you the sense of what the experience is. So it would say, basically, be sure to visit the Foundations of Progress exhibit where you can see decade by decade summaries of, so it's mainly for the context within a sentence of what the thing is called.
So my question, if we have Foundations of Progress, then every interactive needs to be a component of progress, major historical progress through time versus a story. That's what to me foundations means, as opposed to just picking a story of interest. And otherwise it's not a foundation, it's just a story.
Yeah, it'll be rooted in and foundations kind of playing off the construction part of it as well. So yeah, each of those stories will be, they won't just be, hey, this happened in this decade. It really is about the people.
So then is the story, are they primarily having to do with just the Capitol?
Yeah.
Well, technically, each decade is a foundation to the next, right? Stuck in my brain. You could call it something a little less flashy and just say, Capitol Timeline kiosk or panel but This kind of has a nice ring to it that, and it's located in the foundation of the building, really, in garden level. But what does anybody else think?
I just don't have real strong feelings on this. I again fear we just end up calling it the capital timeline, but I think Foundations of Progress is nice. But again, if you hear that, you have no idea what it is.
And if it does limit, that's a good point. If it's gonna limit what you're gonna be able to put on there, I certainly don't wanna do that.
Yeah, I think the foundations does have a lot of different meanings to it. Yeah, you are in the foundation, basement, you are, we were talking about the building, we were talking about any sort of kind of base that you add on to, and history does do that. So if I look back, so I really like the idea of the foundation because we can play off of what is happening in the capital, and then if you build on it later, like we were saying, we come up on the 250th, are there ways that we could layer on additional structural things to the overall timeline? So it does give you a lot of flexibility moving forward. I think foundations and progress, it can be a little more literal to the actual structure, and then I think it gives you freedom to really evolve it as you move forward.
That's good with whatever.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Mary Bravo with the Department of Education, who is a former 5th grade teacher and used to do elementary with the people. She actually had offered that suggestion up. So I don't know if
To hear from our educators over there.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that part of it was that play on words that you had mentioned, that some of what's going to be on that interactive, from my understanding, is that that history of kind of the foundation of the Capitol, and when they did that remodeling and built upon the stronger structure to, I guess, to fortify the Capitol building itself. So there's that like piece of it, as well as like the foundation of our Constitution and all the work that our state continues to do to build and move forward and improve. So that's what I was thinking when I put forth that suggestion. So
Yes, and the heck out of it.
but I'm not married to it, so whatever the little group is.
So
How about your compatriot right beside you there? Who also was a teacher for all of years.
You know, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to keep it succinct.
Good enough endorsement for me. Any strong feelings otherwise?
Madam Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, I echo, I love, not just because I'm a co-worker and colleague of Mary's, but I love the idea. But also, if there's a little bit of curiosity it sparks, it might draw a person to it. Whereas capital timeline, maybe someone goes, oh, I've seen enough timelines, but foundations of progress, you're like, I could see some people wondering what that is and being drawn to.
Yeah. Good stuff. Okay.
So we're settled. Foundations of Progress. Wonderful. Okay, 2 down. The last one we're going to talk about is the staged vault. So if you remember the staged vault, we're utilizing one of the vaults and we're going to stage it as if with things that may have been in the vault. I know we've kind of gone back and forth on what all would be in there. So, and what would be realistic, but it'll be a mixture of monetary, so fake gold bars, replica gold bars, important documentation. There's lots of things that will be within this staged vault. So we have some naming options for this as well. So we've got Timeless Treasures, Wyoming's Treasures, and Vault of Valuables.
of those 3, I think Timeless Treasures is the best.
Madam Chairman, is this gonna be one of those things that we're gonna go back and just say, have you checked out the Capitol vaults? I mean, I'm struggling with timeless treasures, to me, it seems like there should be more of Wyoming history, like this is the treasures of the state, this is like not just what was kept in the vault. Like these were things super valuable to us, so it would incorporate more of versus what was just kept in is my take on it. Like timeless treasure sounds like a curiosity shop. Like, ooh, I wanted to see what's in there. Versus if we're just gonna be like, this was the Capitol, like the Capitol vaults, which would stick with the Capitol kiosk and the.
I think at least it connotates something finite. Excuse me. If you say Wyoming treasures and then you only have 5 or 6 items in there,
That's
you might go away thinking, boy, they didn't have much treasure in there.
Or Wyoming.
So that would probably get you around that. And just be able to peek in and see some timeless treasures, but.
Well, and I'm struggling a little bit with the word treasures because we didn't keep treasure and we're trying to make this historically accurate and a little bit fun with the gold bars, but like treasures is a stretch.
Did we not keep some of our gold in these vaults? I thought that I heard we did. Looking up Mr. Ray and others on that, I thought that I read at one time that we did use these vaults. That we did have the treasury in these vaults in the Capitol when we first got started, but.
Is more truthful, because that's what it is. Actually, it's just a war.
Well, one of the things that were kept in vaults, folks, were like the stock certificates and things. We've got a whole pile of different stock certificates that we get in from time to time from unclaimed property. So we probably have a lot of different stock certificates that people could look at as old companies.
Papers, probably some alcohol and guns would be. Here's
yeah.
something that's different about the vault. The other exhibits, they're super cool and flashy, and we're trying to make sure people know that. When you say vault, people are already drawn to the vaults, like right there, and please keep me honest, you're like, they are into the vaults. So if it has the word vault in the title, I feel like that's not falling back on something boring. I feel like it's like, it doesn't need to be made sexy because the vaults are sexy on their own. So
maybe the vault.
Madam Chair, maybe there's a way, and I guess I'd ask DI this, in all of the artifact labels, we say, be sure to visit because there's actually 6 or 8 vaults. So it's also trying to distinguish that one vault actually has an exhibit in it, but maybe there's a way just to do it more directionally, is to say, be sure to see the vault. I don't know, maybe that's too basic, but it's trying to distinguish that not all of the Mosler vaults have an exhibit in them. There's only one, and we're trying to direct traffic to that particular one.
Good point.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, we may have to play with that a little bit. I do like, you're right, there's already some brand legacy that comes with just the word vault. So I do like embracing that. I also wanted to pull out of my back pocket the legacy loot vault. Yeah, I do like utilizing the vaults. Off the top of my head, I don't have a way of distinguishing that from the other vaults.
So do we just, what if we just call it a vault and we have to name it because we have all these other vaults. So this one has to have a name.
It could be the qualifier, like we were talking for the others. So come check out specific blank, blank, blank. This one is shown in the Capitol Vault. And
The treasurer's vault.
And we naming the big vault now, guys?
That's portions
Yeah.
of history.
No, the treasure, the big vault has the portraits of history display in it. This is gonna
Right.
be a vault that's staged with more historically accurate, you know, like what actually would have been in there.
So this is the one that's, by the extension.
No, this is,
On the garden level.
it's on the garden level and it's the
Garden level vault, yeah.
southwest vault on the south side of the hallway. So it's part of the reason for that. It's one of the legislative vaults, so we're giving up one of our vaults. And then also it's quieter when you take tours back. It's not the main thoroughfare of where the T junction is. That's like
On the
a
opposite
traffic
side of
jam, you know.
where you come up
It's-
from the
yeah.
extension.
So, yeah, there are two vault doors in that
There's
hallway.
3 in that hallway. So there's
So this is one of the 3.
that's the issue. This is one of the 3 and it's the one at the end of the hallway. But it's a really nice
It's got a
path.
double door.
Correct, yeah, it's the corner one. It's a nice path to talk to students and to guided tours because it's quiet. And to your point, people love the vault. So that's, and then you're out of the traffic, but it's hard to distinguish which one it is.
So it. I'm
Well,
not a fan of-
was that vault, was that like the 1890s vault or something? Maybe you just say it's come visit the 1890s vault or something like that. So people know you're looking back in history or it's got valuable things in it. I don't know. The first two sound like titles to a novel, you know, so. And I think you got to use vault in there some way. But I don't know, vault of valuables. Yeah, I'm not.
Did the vault sound well
Yeah.
numbers?
Think so. Mr. Chairman, I think there may just be a way to do it because even if we name it, we still have a directional issue. So it may just be for this one, a matter of saying, be sure to check, there are 6 Moser vaults or 8, I can't remember, in the garden level around the rotunda. Be sure to check out the one that has glimpses of the past in it, more than naming this one.
Yeah.
Because really it's even naming it doesn't solve the problem of people finding it.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't tell everyone to direct everything of interest. All you're gonna do is direct people. If you want them to go to 20 different places.
Wendy, I like that strategy. I think that's kind of where my head was starting to go, is like direct them to the vaults, but also make sure that you're specifically saying, hey, be sure and check out this one. We can figure out the words later, we don't have to name it, but like that we essentially is a historic reenactment, and that I think that helps.
We refer to them collectively as the Mosler vaults, so I think we can just say one of the Moser vaults has
Is full of treasure.
full of treasure. You may or may not find them compelling.
Full of old stock certificates.
The 5th graders will love that.
Find some good
Oh, let's
ones.
go look at those stocks. Right, Mr. Treasurer?
Yeah, they're interesting. Old railroad stocks.
Okay, I think we've got our direction on that. You guys did it. We did the naming section.
And we did it, oh no, sorry, I thought we were. Okay, does everybody want a very quick expeditious break? Yes,
Culture. Yeah.
okay, let's be back here, we are starting at 11.
I just say historic vault. Okay, send it. It's the shit out of me.
Yeah, we still here for that? No. Yeah, we're basically the governor that's like, listen, you know. And then later on, they governor. Do the rocks on the. Governor stuff. Of course, I already know, but. Yeah. Careful what you ask for. Yeah, so I think that. All right, well, I'm gonna talk to Charles quick, but I think we're good. Stay hydrated. Yeah.
There's an Upper Colorado Citizens River Conference meeting in the auditorium today, so I was telling Senator Hicks about the work you last week.
And how we're trying to avoid the taped up left, right arrow signs to.
Yeah, with them.
I know, we're in.
You know, it's funny, we're on the Wayfinding committee and I've got to go see something dedicated off after this meeting. And I was asking, you see this now, if I need to get to the west side, Herser, not be blocked in a hallway up there, which door do I go in to find?
And I was like, had snacks.
Yeah, here we are on the Wayfinding.
Pick up a brochure.
All right, I think we are on static content and design updates.
Yes, so in this section, we are going to give an update on where we are with color. So, there we go, there's Ian. Ian, do you want to lead the discussion on color?
Happy to. I believe this can be a discussion if we need to, but I believe that this is more of an overview of the work that has been going on behind the scenes to ensure that the color that we do have in these interpretive panels are as true to the building as possible. So I have a series of slides and I'm going to walk through high level, and we'll sort of walk through how we are determining these colors. And then the last few slides are about color usage. So not only are we working on what do the colors look like, but also where are we putting those colors in these spaces. So first, color builds. Ooh, color builds. So we're focusing on just these colors down here at the bottom. These are the colors that are used for the interpretive experiences. We had some color samples last month and we got some really great feedback. And so we went back and we looked at these again. So taking this green, for example, what we did was we dove back into the paint boards that we were provided. And these paint boards and Evergreen used a color system called Munsell. I won't go into the details of exactly what Munsell is, but it is a very clear, interesting take on how you categorize color with hue, value, and chroma. So from this, we were able to find some clear direction on what these colors should be looking like. And we have a number of different tools at our, I had the word a moment ago, tools at our thing that we can use to be able to take Munsell and translate it into a system that we use in the industry, which is Pantone. I'm sure a lot of people know about that. So that gets us a part of the way there. But then we have other tools where we can dial in that color even further to make it even closer to exactly what it needs to be. So the colors that we are looking at for this exhibit are pulling directly from the colors, the wall colors within the building, and colors used within the trompe l'oeil. So that is a high-level overview of what we are doing, and we are doing that for each color. And then from there, or simultaneously, we are also looking at how we are applying these colors throughout the building. So I will click through these sheets just to sort of give a general view of where we're at, and we can come back to these if we would like. So things like we are looking at having the suffrage hall being a mix of red and blue. For the executive conference rooms and other spaces, we are looking at what are the colors used in those rooms and pulling a color from them. So the interpretive experiences that we are putting in there feel like they've always been there, feel that they are speaking to the space and help continue to make it feel timeless. So we have in the executive conference room, red panels. Within specifically, we will get to this on the next levels, but inside the rotunda itself, we're starting to look at how the west wing is more red and the east wing is more green. And then we apply that same sort of thinking on the other levels. So in looking at the Historic Supreme Court, there is the gorgeous orange, warm trompe l'oeil against that blue. So pulling out that accent color for those panels. And then same thing for the Legislative Service Office, that gorgeous green that's a little brighter. So going with something that's a bit more muted, the dark brown that pulls from the wood in there. And then again, we're starting to lean into starting to brand the interpretive exhibits on the west and east wings in that red and that green, which pulls from the color of the carpet in the House and Senate chambers. And as we move up to the third level, we have that same system going on. So again, on the third level, we have another interpretive panel talking about the historic Supreme Court. So we are again using the orange. And with the gallery panels, we also have the red, and we have also the reader rails around the rotunda are in that same sort of color scheme to try to help visitors understand in a subliminal way, not in any very direct or overt way, which side of the building that they're on, since we all know that this building is symmetrical and gorgeous and confusing. The garden level is in progress right now, but we did have a good discussion with part of the core team yesterday to figure out how to update these colors to work well with the furniture in the spaces and other elements throughout that. And then the same thing with the Capitol grounds, where we have laid out where those panels are. And where we are currently at is panels on the exterior are a lighter background, pulling from the sandstone of the Capitol itself and using those rich colors that internally inside the Capitol are used as the primary background colors, and on the exterior are used more as an accent color. And that is my brief overview.
Thank you, Ian. So
Wow.
as we were looking over the final panels and final content for approval, the package that was in file stage, I think we noted that we were still working on color. So hopefully from what Ian has gone through, you can see there's a lot of thought, methodology, theory that's going into how do we continue to make sure that the building is the hero and that the content that we have for the interpretive panels are really helping to keep the building as hero and not distract from that. So the panels that Rihanna's picking up are the panels that Rihanna just picked up. These are samples that we walked through yesterday through the building. So we've got each color, and as you saw that there was a different value saturation from one side to another. We looked at this with all different types of lighting and where it would be to make sure that we're in the right ballpark. The other items that are on the tables, if you guys are super interested, we can walk you through how we did kind of choose where we are within that spectrum to just make sure we're getting the right one. And again, it's really to complement and not take away from the building. The building is, the Capitol building is the hero for it. So we've got these two colors that we're feeling very comfortable with the red. We've got the brown, brown. We've got the blue. The orange we are still working on, and this green, I think we've got a solution there. So this isn't the final approved, but we are getting there. And then in terms of how the exterior will look, making sure that we take into account what the exterior outside elements would do. So be very careful with what those colors will be, as well as how we handle the gold stripe that's on the top and that would be used in suffrage panels. That banner that's on top of those panels as well. So lots of thought going on behind here. I hope that gives you confidence that the DI team, the creative team, design team, and your core team is definitely putting a lot of thought and effort into what these colors are and how they really bring it to life.
One other thing to add to that about things that are still in process is in rooms like the executive conference room, we have color aligned the artifact labels with the main interpretive panel. There are some instances where we are showing that, like in the governor's office side, where the governor's double mobile panel is orange, and we are potentially speccing the governor's portraits labels to also be that orange. We are also looking at what it would look like if those labels were a variation on the wall color, so they fall away a little bit more and allow the paintings to be the focal point. So we are also looking at that in a couple of different spots to see what system we feel works best.
Madam Chair, I'd also say part of the reason I actually asked DI if they pull out all these different color, the ranges of the light to dark, just because I thought it might be kind of fun for you guys to see. DI has really made a lot of efforts, both from taking the evergreen original historical paint samples, converting them to Pantone, as well as it's just kind of fun to look at these, how much behind the scenes goes into getting you the colors that you see now to make sure they don't compete with the building.
And just like when picking a paint color, it looks different under one light versus another, and natural light combined with it. So we are definitely doing our exercises there to ensure that we're picking the right colors.
Exactly.
And if you have any other color theories that you want to ask Ian about, he's certainly happy to teach a class on it, probably. He does teach.
And if you just come to my house and select white paint for me, that.
Yes.
Yes, Ian is up for hire.
He's up for hire, yeah.
What I'm curious mostly is that you've got a lot of variations throughout the building in different blends. And so that I don't see as a little. How do you monitor all of those variations over time? Because they're similar, but they're not the same. Different floors and different situations. And that can be a little confusing as well, as even though it's color coordinated. It's a little bit of overload for me when I'm just looking at it. So how many variations are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We have, 5 different color variations that we're looking at. Putting them up in the space did help, I think, ease any of those concerns that I think any of us may have had of, oh, this blue might be too much. You do want some contrast in what we're doing, but we also, again, don't want to take away from the building. So doing that in the different spaces did help, I think, cause any of the concerns of there is too much. They do look very, very much like a family when they're together and blend into the building. I'll let you and Ian speak to any other stuff in that.
Ian, do you want to take?
The more variety you have, the more it takes it away from the building. Keep having different colorations.
And we're trying to be, mindful of where those colors are used in what spaces, so it doesn't detract from it. When you're talking about over time, how do you mean, I guess explain that more.
Well, for modifications, for changes, that means when every one of them want to change, we've got a whole different color scheme.
If you want to
It just makes it a lot more complicated for the change and then there clearly wouldn't be interchangeable. Some of them, their thought was they can move from one floor to the other, be able to all. If we want to change the number we have out there, all the different options that maximizing the flexibility of what we put.
Yeah, Most of them are pretty assigned to what the area is that they're gonna be around, so.
So we may change that.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think if the structure in terms of the, colors that you have in the building don't necessarily change, I think you could stick with this over time. And yeah, if one moves over here, then you just look at what color makes the most sense. With 5 that we have, we didn't want to get too monotone and too few colors either. And it also can be a kind of a wayfinding and in a way of letting them know that there's something over here, I can go over here and let it be a little bit different than what they last saw, so they know it is something different. Ian, I'm sorry, I'm talking creative. I'll let you speak design color.
No, you're doing well. It's a little hard to hear y'all anyways, but yes, in general, we have looked at having a set of colors that all speak to the colors throughout the building, and as much as possible, pulling from the surrounding colors for where we put the different colors. So looking for not necessarily pulling from the main wall colors, but pulling from accent colors in the ceiling and the trompe l'oeil, in the wood itself, in the carpeting, as a way to help us pick those colors that work most harmoniously in those spaces. The main corridors and the garden level provide us the most sort of fun flexibility, where there's enough sort of a more singular color palette where we can have a little bit more flexibility of what we use.
Yeah, and these colors are based on what building colors were approved. And so we're just dialing that in to, again, keep the building as neutral. We didn't veer off from what there was already pre-approval, because you guys went through a lot of work with Evergreen and the first part of the project.
So Rachel, just to pick up where the representative left off, a big part of that question might have been aimed at those 4 or 5 colors. Are there variations within the maroon color, for example? And if so, if that panel gets damaged or we have to change it out, are we gonna have to pay attention to, well, that's one of 3 or 4 different colorations. It's maroon, but we're not sure which maroon it is.
Yeah, we'll definitely leave you with a very clear spec on what that is if you update it without going through DI, which I don't know why you would do. But if, we definitely leave you with what that is and what methodology or what production technique that we used for it, because we are looking at that as well.
Are each of those kiosks are each of the displays gonna be a different color, for example?
Each one of these displays that are
Yeah,
up
we'll
on screen.
work within the 5 colors.
Yeah, they'll be different colors, but I think it's also a note that most of that panel is all printed as one big panel. I'm having a hard time understanding exactly what your question / concern is, so I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. Those panels, so the upper left-hand corner, all of those panels, anything that's on there, that's all printed as one big sheet. There's gonna be variation because there's some background imagery happening. It's gonna change from bottom left corner to top right corner. Like the maroon is going to undulate. That is going to be part of it. We would want to make sure that we are keeping track based on what Ian is saying, and like he addressed, is like that color was picked for that location for very specific reasons because of the carpet and everything. If you do replace that, you're gonna wanna like not replace it with the blue one, you're gonna wanna replace it with the maroon one. So keeping track of this and keeping these documents, these plans and such, and making sure that we're, managing the change properly is key. There's gonna be fluctuation across the board. Also in the way that these things are printed. So Ian did a great job of walking you guys through the Pantone process, but then when we do print these, anything that you see printed out here actually goes back to another process, which is more of a 3-color process, so RGB, because that's how these printers print. Pantone is very much for other specific. It is a color match that comes from the Pantone factory. That if you want to do a spot color, if you're Microsoft and you want your spot, or Coca-Cola and your color is red, it's it's a specific color that is printed. This is printed as a big sheet. There's gonna be undulation in it. What we're trying to do is dial in when we can exactly what the maroon color is so that we get a baseline. We'll keep all these control samples where they need to be printed. Again, so that everybody knows and can match them. Because, you know, there's some little undulations in the color, and the maroon panel is not all the same maroon. It's going to undulate from top to bottom. So
And
that makes a little bit of sense.
yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I guess just to maybe clarify a couple things, if you look here on the left side of this page, these are the 5 colors that you already approved at a macro level quite a while ago. And what DI has done is really tried to just dial them in so that they all work together as a family to kind of help with that concept of, whoa, all of a sudden I'm seeing blue and red. You're really seeing subtle differences is the idea behind this. And when you're talking about a panel, it's that concept that you approved, I think 2 meetings ago. You might remember for a while, the designers played with actually using different colors from that 5-color palette on one panel. So there might have been a red here and a blue here on one panel. And you requested just no one color, but it can be lighter or darker. But this would not be, it wouldn't be different shades of maroon. You don't have 4 maroons. You have 1 maroon and then it gets lighter or darker depending on its use on the panel. And so that's what these were for, just kind of fun for you to see. But these, with a couple exceptions, are your family of colors. This green is still looking a little too brown in the space, army green, we called it. And the orange, we just thought might need lightened up just a little bit from the red, because it is kind of almost looking like you have 2 reds. So the orange is just gonna get a little bit lighter. But the idea is that you really don't, these aren't primary colors. I think Ian, you called them muted rich tones, or so that they are meant to not have shock every time you see the next one. And they're meant to be the example Ian gave about, like outside the Senate, you have red carpet. So you probably wouldn't want to throw in orange in that space. So kind of keeping the reds in there gives more of a soothing feel than a, oh my gosh, I got so many things going on type of feel. So that's what really is for you today, are the ones that we think you could go ahead and approve, which would be the blue, the red, and the brown. And knowing that the orange is just getting lightened up, and the green would be getting a little less brown. And I don't know if you want to look at those one more time in that context.
So my question is, are we doing this in a way that we're not married to who's manufacturing and where they're being manufactured?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Ideally, we want to do it locally, we want to do it quickly,
Yeah.
in the future. And economically.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you'll get basically owner's manual with this that will include all the Pantone colors, all the font colors, that you could take it anywhere and have work done in the future.
So if you wanted to add wall panels or you wanted to add something else that would complement it, you certainly would have the ability to do so.
Madam Co-Chairman, that's exactly where I was trying to get to, is just to make sure that we go down the road, whoever follows us will have the opportunity and knowledge to replace something if we have to, and know why we put something where we put it. And by the way, Madam Co-Chairman, I really do appreciate the work of the core team. Thank you for all that you do to bring forth recommendations and work with DI on all the details that come to our meeting. So anyway, well done. I don't know what it takes, Madam Chairman, for an approval, but I'm all on board.
Yeah, I think absent any other objection, recognizing that the green and the orange are gonna be tweaked a bit, I think they look lovely.
Right. Oh, I would say that the material that we're using to print on, which is what will be essentially laminated to the panel, is an industry standard. So if you go, and we're used to everybody, you know, using a local vendor once you know, we're quote unquote done. That's not outside of, you know, our our discussions with almost any client that we have is like, you're gonna have updates. You're not going to wanna come all the way back to Kansas City and, wait for it to get shipped up here and stuff. You're gonna work with a local vendor. That's totally acceptable, and that's what we would want you guys to do. That material is an industry standard material, so anybody locally should be able to get it. The test prints are gonna be very beneficial as you move forward, the control samples. Because I can't control what printer they're using. I can't control what the humidity is like in their shop. It can change it a little bit. So I think if you can just say, we need to match this and we need to match this as perfectly as possible with the vendor that you do choose as you move forward, you're gonna be in really good shape.
Well, we don't want you guys to forget us though. I mean.
No.
Kansas
I mean, and we don't want to forget you. Like, we want to help when we can, but we recognize that there are things, quick panels, quick updates that need, that need a local service provider, which is fine. You just come with us to us with the big expensive stuff and then.
Wonderful. Okay, we will move on and wanted to give an update on content. So part of this was color. You have a lot of items that you are looking at in final stage now. If you want to go to the next slide. So overall, for grounds first, second, and third level, we're looking at updating the graphic layouts. We're seeing feedback come through. We're updating things already. You will get garden level at the end of this week or early next week. And we are still working on the extension. So in the kind of you are here, if you want to hit the next slide, really letting you know that for the grounds first, second, and third levels, and then garden level that will be coming this week, this really is kind of the final check off before it goes into production. So this is an important role, important time and phase. And again, you guys have put in a lot of work up until this point, really getting it to where it is. And we want to make sure everybody feels confident as we move forward. So just to take a step back and remind everybody where we are with content and what the intent was. If you want to go to the next slide, Ian. So the overall message for exhibit experiences, this is the people's house. This is your home. You belong here. Just like I said at the very beginning of the meeting, that's the overall goal and strategy that we're going for. And so we want to make sure that the vision, or letting them know that Wyoming had a vision for this building even before you were a state, and that you've done incredible things. And the action that was done here has shaped the history of Wyoming, especially true on the suffrage story. We want to make sure that they understand that state government impacts their life and anything happening nationally, but it's accessible and it's easy to participate in the government, and that it's a citizen legislature. So members of your neighborhood and that live in your communities really are what makes up the government. When we think about how each of the panels really work together. So as you've seen throughout the approval process, that we're hitting on 3 key topics. You're hitting on government, you're hitting on history, and we're hitting on art and architecture. And we have to think about how all those stories are told. Typically, the government is on slide 1 and architecture is on slide 2, and really thinking about how we tell the right stories about what they are seeing right around them. And we know that exhibits really have to appeal to a variety of audiences. So it's the skimmers, those people that are just kind of looking through, browsers who might be reading a little more, and gorgers who are really interested in, and will probably even scan the QR code to find out even more. We're also promoting surrounding experiences. So not only the breadcrumbs that Rhianna mentioned previously, getting them from one area to another, but also other areas that we would want them to visit, the State Museum, the museum store, the Judicial Learning Center, other areas that we want to promote for tourism. So we have those breadcrumbs that allow them to do that. We know that there are docent guided tours, but we also know that there's self-guided tours as well. So when we're writing the content, we were really leaning into what those self-guided tours would look like to make sure that each of the users and viewers readers were understanding what we were saying. So Ian already hit on color. So some of these may look repetitive to what you just saw for color, but just again, try to take a step back. We've got panels that are outside that hit on different topics. We'll get to that. We've got Great panels that are on the first level, second level, and overall third level. I'm going to very quickly go through high level what that content is, knowing that this is the last chance really before it goes into production, to say, yes, these are the right stories and the right messages that we have. So starting outside, we've got the first one on Capitol Square that really gives the history of Capitol Square and other locations to visit. The next one hits on the exterior architectural elements, dome, drum. There's a lot of things that it focuses on. The bison, so it's the importance of the bison, as well as featuring the sculpture. Building evolution and exterior, talk about the improvements that happen there. We go through the spirit of Wyoming, and we hit on the Hirschler buildings. For the first floor, we start with that welcome to the People's House. This is in Suffrage Hall. So it's the rights and responsibilities of the citizens, as well as the overview of the state government. Again, I'm flying through here, so stop me if you want to go more in depth, but these are also going to be posted and are in final stage for your review. We go through the Wyoming Capitol architecture, overview of the building construction, connection to the cattle barons, as well as the historic national landmark that the building is in. We go through, we introduce the concept of suffrage and the importance of that in a historical context. We highlight William Bright's role in William suffrage, as well as Esther Morris and Amelia Post, how that early activism worked. We talk about the suffrage movement going outside of Wyoming, so exporting that nationally, what the first were for that for the state, but also nationally, with a highlight on Grace and May. Then we go through within Suffrage Hall, we are featuring different suffragists within the different meeting rooms. So we have Nellie Taylor Ross, and then other featured women that are through there. Sorry for the formatting issue I unofficially caused, and featuring Esther Morris and Amelia Post. Then we go through each of the roles. So the state superintendent of public instruction, that role, what that means, the profile on a still reel, as well as the changes to the Capitol over the years on the backside on side 2. We could talk about the state auditor and have a profile on Minnie Mitchell. We talk about the fireplaces on the second side. You're doing good keeping up, Ian. We have the role of the Secretary of State profile there of Thompson, as well as on the second side, really hitting on the woodwork of the wainscot. We talk about the state treasurer, the role, as well as a profile on Mr. Smith, and talk about decorative urns and other decorative plaster on the back side. We have the office of the governor, and again, a profile of Nellie Taylor Ross, and on the back side, the columns, as well as the portraits and the vault experience. And then we have a brief bio of each of the governors of the featured portraits that are in that area. I won't take time to read through each one of those. And then we move on to the second level. We have the territorial house location, as well as a profile of Mr. Brown, and then how they elected pro-suffrage delegates and the return of what that room looked like in 1888. We go through the duties and responsibilities of the Senate, outside the Senate, and we have a profile there, as well as the lobby on the backside and the Wyoming flag. There's a bunch of, we have some Gallings artwork that we feature. And then we go into the LSO office, location of the Territorial Council, again, some more composites. We talk about the protests that happened at the Capitol and the details, historic details that are in that room. Then we move to the House of Representatives and talk about the duties and responsibilities of the House. We have another profile in that area. And then on the back side, we have the artistic details of that House chamber, the paint discovery, and we introduce the Gallings. And we have more Gallings artwork after that. Then we move to the third level, where we talk about the historic Supreme Court and mention of the Territorial House. We have historical details like the chandelier, the Wyoming Constitution, and the restoration of the chamber back to that 2-story space, including the gallery. We have 4 reader rails that are within the space on 3, overlooking the rotunda. we talk about what happened, the architectural elements of that, and the Four Sisters. We have the Senate chambers, how that evolved, another profile, as well as the Allen Tepper True murals. We have the Joint Appropriations Committee and how that restoration of the vaulted ceiling happened, as well as the Capriva murals. And then finally, we have an invitation to see legislature in action with the House Chamber expansion. We have another profile and the Allen Tepper True murals. Okay, I flew through that. Is there any questions or concerns about the content and stories that we do in our Capitol? All of this you have seen. You have approved these stories. You are currently approving the final version of the panels. Again, like we said, we are still working on the color, and it is all there for final approval before we move into production.
Thank you for that overview. I mean, did we want to have, and I apologize, Wendy, for fumbling here. I mean, I think there's an awful lot of commentary in file stage so far, and I'm just wondering if we're in the right place with where we want to be as far as this being final approval.
And Madam Chair, I just had asked the chairman to bring this up because we already are getting some comments and we're not sure as staff, when we go through them with DI, how to kind of reconcile some of those. We did ask our director of LSO to give kind of a cold read of it, and he has some comments that have never come up. So my apologies, I had not asked the chairman's permission for that beforehand. I think we were kind of looking for cold readers and proofers, and so just kind of how we as staff work with DI in the final reconciliation of the comments.
Yes, absolutely. So we are going through it now. You will see there were some unintentional errors that happened. And so we are putting screenshots of the corrected version of that in file stage for some of those quality control issues, I would say. So you'll see that. And then we are going to do one more review with the core team. So they will make sure that those changes are updated. So we are working with the core team. We didn't want to burden you with yet another review, but your final comments will be addressed and the core team will see that one more time.
I think the question for the DI maybe has, let me take a stab at this and I'll ask it ungracefully. There's some comments in file stage that are sort of like, I don't like this story, or the picture's wrong or something. And at this point, it's getting a little late in the game. And so I think the core team and DI needs some guidance on some of that. Because we're at the point now where if we start over on some of that, we have compromised the timeline. If that makes sense.
And Madam Chairman, and maybe Representative Nicholas, I might look to you because I know you added some comments this morning, and we're just not sure if there's any direction from a subcommittee member who is the 6 elected officials on there, how at this point we reconcile it, or do you as elected officials want to go in the file stage and give us some direction? The problem is we don't really have these out here going through them today page by page. You have this week and next with garden level to see them all together. And I don't know if we need a quick online meeting if we're not sure whose comments take precedence, or if only one of you of the 6 elected comments as your staff, do we go ahead and adopt that? I think is the direction we're looking for.
And Madam Chair, something else to keep in mind, you are missing still one floor. You're missing the garden level. So it's kind of hard comprehensively to read it through. Because you're like, oh, well, where's that really great railroad story? Or where's, et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe you're leaning too hard into one thing. Well, you're missing an entire floor that talks about other things. So I think next week that will give you comfort knowing that different industries, different parts of stories come to life in a different way. And then also to tap onto that, we still have the digital activation. So there's still more to come. Within the next week, you're going to be able to read it comprehensively from what the experience like is from the grounds, the first, second, third, and then also in the garden level. So that's still to come. And I think that is, as I kind of did another review of it earlier this week, I'm like, you're still missing part, you're missing the whole floor, right? So I think next week it'll help to have that comprehensive experience.
Madam Chair, we have asked that DI leave your grounds first, second, and third level review open through next week. Try to make as many comments as possible so they can get going on it, but that it will remain open so that when you also get the garden level next week, if you say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize this, and therefore I need to add some comments.
Well, Madam Chairman, just, it's kind of difficult at this stage, you know, but I will say that at some point, we have to trust all the work we've done. I'm not interested in taking down 2 or 3 of these displays because we don't like a picture or we don't like a particular headline, or we might have written it a little differently. On the other hand, we do want to catch any mistakes, and we want to modify it that way. But I don't mean to meander here. I'm sorry, I'm not stating this very well, but I think we're at a stage now where we don't want to start over on panels.
I would agree. I think this is, you know, maybe switching out a word, maybe striking a word, maybe adding a word or a comma, but I think I'm feeling a little bit like the ship has sailed on really swapping out stories or themes.
Yeah, anything very earth shattering, you guys, we run the risk of bringing something to a screeching halt, missing deadlines and backing things up, and I don't think we're interested in doing that. I'm not. I think we're always, any project of this level, you're always going to be able to find something somewhere that you might not have done that way. Wish you might have done it a little differently or whatever. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, and I'm happy to have a Zoom meeting if that's necessary. I would kind of lean on our core team a little bit there. I certainly don't want to turn a deaf ear to anyone who has input on these panels or interactives or any of the things we've talked about today. But we're almost to the end here, folks. And it's time for us to sprinkle some holy water on this and send it off.
So when you say that we have till June 30th to make comments and suggestions, now you're saying that we really don't. That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it's and the idea to say it's too late to make a couple of major changes. Why? Because that wasn't represented to us yesterday or the day before yesterday, but now it is today. That doesn't make sense. There are things in here, 2 months ago, I said, get rid of this picture of that phone, but they're still in here. And so do I have to make those comments over again? Just because it wasn't done?
And I think, Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, the awkward part for staff is to know without, voting story by story. If one comment, if all 6 of you have access to it and one comment is made and it's a major directional change, I think that's what we were looking for guidance on, because probably 2 or 3 months ago, the reason we didn't direct DI to make those changes is it was like, well, nobody else commented on this. And that was a story that was already approved. So I think that's where for your staff, we want to be sensitive to implementing the direction of your collective desires. But if there is one member who has strong feelings and you as a subcommittee are open to that, we just as staff, that's kind of what we need, I think, at this point from the subcommittee, because Representative Nicholas, you're right, your opportunity to make comment is through June 30th, and then we reconcile what to do with it. And I think our question is, what do we do with it if it's a major directional change? I think some things like taking out adjectives and things like that to simplify the language or make it less flowery. I think there's some of that we as staff would feel comfortable doing. I think it's more if it's actually changing stories, or do we kind of go through the exercise and then send the subcommittee, hey, here's some things that we didn't address and we're not sure what to do with. Maybe that would be the best way to handle it.
Well, thank you, Wendy, Madam Chairman. It sounds like I'm happy to sit down on a Zoom meeting, and if there are specific panel changes, story changes, but photographic changes, we can address them. And it sounds like we probably better do that. We can hold this up as long as we want to. I didn't mean to make that we can't. We can stop the presses. Done that many times in my life, but at some point, I'm excited to send this off and get under production so that someday we can have these panels up. That's all I'm saying. But we better find out if some of these suggested changes reflect all 6 of the main subcommittee members, you know, let alone our ex officio members who've been valuable to the team as well. That's the piece I'm not sure about. Chairman, I don't.
Yeah, and Mr. Co-Chair, I think maybe a separate Zoom meeting to round up. It sounds like there might be maybe 3 or 4 issues that we need to sort of hash out and make a decision on, because it's not fair to expect staff to guess who they should.
No, I think it's up to us to carve out some time and get it back together. Whether or not the superintendent or the treasurer can join us, I hope maybe, and I don't want to exclude anyone either. So I'm not sure if we want to include anyone who can make it on there, but the actual votes take place with the 3 and 3. Representative Sherwood, certainly we have to make sure that we can have the members there. So that's the directive, I guess, to Brianna and Wendy. Probably looking at mid next week, or
It's holiday week, which is tough towards the end of the week, so maybe before then. And I guess, I mean, do you think that we can narrow it down to maybe 3 to 5 issues to say, here's what we need you to figure out?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think we certainly can. I think maybe just an example from this morning is there's a few times where cattle barons are highlighted, and that would remove something from the panel and need to find something else. Or maybe it's something, if a member has a concern, we can kind of visit. If at the end of this week and the end of next week, if no one else has commented on something, it might really be important as you're commenting to either say, yeah, I agree with this, or so we have a sense of the body.
Okay.
But then if there are still outstanding things, or only one member's commented and it's a major thing that would change like what we need to do with the panel, I think we could highlight those and either figure out if we could send those to you. After you review, I would wait till you also review garden level, so it's comprehensive.
Okay.
And then we send you the handful of outliers that perhaps we don't feel comfortable making the call. And then you can decide whether or not, like, yeah, that rises to the level of us needing to get on a quick Zoom meeting to resolve.
Madam Chairman, we've always operated as an entire subcommittee, and I don't want to close anyone out of whatever discussion we might have. So we will, you know, let's go forth knowing that we're going to try to gather on a Zoom, and anyone who can join us is certainly welcome. Ultimately, there will be, you know, the 6 votes to decide if we're going to hold things up or not. And I hope that all makes sense.
Mr. Chairman. I would always just like as an ex officio, we've had our opportunity to comment. And so I don't think it's as necessary to make sure like we can be on that call, because ultimately the buck stops with the 6 votes. Like, we've given our input, so I think it's the 6 of you get the final say. And sometimes I think, I know myself and others, we just add chatter to the conversation.
No, thank you for that. That makes sense to kind of, at this point, we need to streamline and be efficient and make some tough decisions.
Okay.
And I apologize, I do have to step out here in a couple of minutes, so let's go forth, but if I just get up my stuff and leave, people will know it's not because I'm angry or ill.
Okay, DI has one.
Not something we said.
DI just has one more quick little point. So Ian, if you want to move on. So there are a couple additional wayfinding elements that we are adding that are listed up here. We are utilizing this within the contingency and are still within budget, like I said at the beginning. So this is in your document, just in essence of time, if there's any questions on.
And Mr. Chairman, I can just give some quick background on this. These are some things that had come up as the original scope was already in process. The mother's room signs inside of the Capitol. And there's a mechanical sign that's actually wrong down in the extension. Those just didn't make it into the original wayfinding scope, so we had set those aside. The other 3 are truly new in the last week. And those are ones that the subcommittee has not discussed. The individual gold lettering, the state troopers had a good idea right now. Their desk area is kind of, there's just a silver and blue seal there that we don't even know where it came from. It doesn't go with the area. And so they've also got a lectern out in the rotunda that the oversight group had gone to a lot of work to make sure it was appropriate for the rotunda. And the thought was, if it had gold state trooper lettering and a seal, that even when the troopers aren't there, give kind of a subliminal, like, oh, somebody might be around watching what I'm doing. This has come up especially on Saturdays where there's fewer people in the building to watch people, but to understand that, like, hey, there is security here from a property protection standpoint. So that's what those are. And then we haven't heard back yet, but the governor's office, we're not sure if the ceremonial conference room might also be a candidate for one of the seals that you put in meeting rooms. They do have a small one in there now that is a little bit different from the rest of them. So it's basically a request of the subcommittee. We don't have pricing yet, but whether those would be appropriate for use of contingency to add to the wayfinding package.
So you mean in the governor's ceremony?
Yeah, they have a small seal in there now and it's blue and gold and it has a wider kind of oak trim, more contemporary oak piece around it.
So do we have a request or a recommendation from the governor's office?
We do not. So we're waiting to hear from them. It's just if they would like one, the question for you all is whether or not that would be an appropriate use of contingency. And we can also come back to you once we get pricing. It's just, we didn't want DI to start working on pricing until we knew whether, how to handle these kind of, there will definitely be things that will come up as we go through this package or this process, and in package 1, these are the issues we're aware of right now.
Seems appropriate that we would, try to include representative, don't you think?
Yeah, we could, we have them, we'll use them sooner or later.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we should move forward with getting pricing and knowing that it'll be contingency funds.
Thanks for taking over.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Have a good rest of the day.
Travel safely.
Yeah, I think, is that enough to really get?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
So next steps for us is we're going to continue working. Package 1 is in production. Signage and wayfinding is in production. Package 2 with the static exhibits. We said we're finalizing all of that, and right behind it is package 3 and 4. Thank you all for your time today.
So deadline, on file stage is 30, which is, I'm trying in my mind to process what day of the week that is.
Sunday.
Come to the end of next week, right?
That comes to the end of this week, so Sunday of this week.
Sunday.
And then we will keep it open, like Wendy said, so that when you get when you get the grounds level, then, or garden level, you will be able to make sure if there's anything you want to go back and look at.
And do what you can, and I'm talking to myself as well. I've been a little limited over the last couple of months, so thank you to all of you for picking up the slack and helping so much on file state. We will all do our best to get on there and really value any input, especially if there's concerns or whatever. Let's wait so that next week when we gather on a Zoom call to finish a couple of things up, we have good guidance from the subcommittee. That would be great. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's it from
Awesome.
Next up for us is an update of Brandon. Take it away.
Mr. Chairman, quick update. So we're currently working with Trainer on scope and pricing for their change order. So from the last meeting, not much movement in design or anything else. We're working on getting them all lined up with scope pricing and executing that change order to push the acoustics forward.
And could you just quickly encapsulate some of the major points of what we're up to with that? With that effort, there are some things we're gonna do and some things we're not.
So the exercise of that from the last meeting is, correct me if I'm wrong here, Wendy, but the encapsulation is to push it forward so that we understand then the pricing and we can get the proper pricing that then we can make those decisions moving forward. I mean, we made some small decisions last time, example, throw rugs, types of things that we didn't want to have included in that. But based on their research, we didn't really eliminate anything. We wanted to understand it better and understand the costing. And that's why we're moving into the construction document phase of that project.
Thank you, Brad. What do you need to add on that?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, you made a couple of different motions for directives to State Construction Department last time. They included full design of the acoustical remedies, recognizing that when you get that design and work through the process with Trainer, you may or may not pull the trigger, but you would have that design for any one room you may choose to proceed on, or the entire package. The second motion that you made was full design for build out of the broadcast studio. And then some smaller directives about proceeding with testing and procurement of mobile systems for rotunda extension and outdoor events. And then I'm missing one more of those motions. Oh, I think continuing to proceed with some of the sound reinforcement AV system remedies was the other direction. Am I missing any of the other directives?
I believe those were, all encompassing, yeah.
That really helps you guys to just refresh our memory on where we were with some of that. And I think that the target date was the end of July to try to come back to us, right, Brandon?
Correct.
Isn't that where and then we can start making some decisions. I think that the desire from the legislative branch is certainly to try to do some things. Absolutely. Places like the appropriations, and all of that, so.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, that is an important clarification and Brandon can provide more details. The discussion at the last meeting was, can any of this work be completed before the next session? And it sounds like from Trainer, it really is a multi-month design process. So your actual, if you choose to proceed, your construction work would not start until after next session.
Thank you. Okay, any other thoughts, Brandon?
Not at this time. I mean, some of the discussion is bringing back, through construction and design, at 65%, having a real thorough review before they get into nuts and bolts, with some costing at that point. And then again, just being on the meetings monthly and having an update and conversation, but, setting some milestones for some pretty heavy lifting from the committee to make some decisions as we're pushing forward.
No, I think, we've talked about reaching out to some other folks and making sure that some of this acoustical work has paid dividends in other places. I think that's a relevant discussion still going forth, and maybe that kind of segues us into new business. And Wendy, I'd go back to you and see if there what new business might we have? What things can we cover to make sure we get out of today? We need to do.
Mr. Chairman, I think DI has everything that they need. You have given us direction on new wayfinding scope. I think the only thing is starting to look forward to packages 3 and 4. We, as well as acoustics, we may have some opportunities that we may want to tour some areas. The Colorado Capitol is using the same product that Trainer has recommended. So it might be some, whichever subcommittee members are interested in visiting, we may look at some of those opportunities as well.
Representative Sherwood, anything old or new that you'd like to weigh in on?
No, I appreciate the recap of where we're at. And it's exciting to see that we are progressing, and there's a lot to celebrate, a lot of good work to celebrate. So I can hear you just fine. If you need a hard and fast vote, I'm here, but otherwise very pleased with the progress.
Okay, thank you, Representative. Appreciate you being here as always. And Representative Nicholas, anything old or new? Okay, that brings us to the end. I would remind the committee that we're lined up for July and we're lined up again for August. So we will keep pushing. And we talked about maybe getting together next week, a quick subcommittee review if there's items of major concern on any of the panels, etc. Thank you very much. That does bring us to public comment after new business. So anybody in the room for public comment? It's always welcome.
Thanks so much.
Always appreciate the interest. Is there anybody online by any chance? Treasurer Meyer is.
Yeah, I sent a couple of pictures there to you, and I'd ask everybody to take a look at it's the 2024 Wyoming Wildlife Photography Edition, and that's what the Game and Fish puts out. They've got some, I think, some pictures in there that you guys would might want to look at. Some really beautiful ones with the Aurora Borealis shining through Old Faithful, and some different things like that. Some nighttime shots and some good winter shots in there as well to look at. So I guess add those to your to the pictures that you want to peruse to see what might I guess pique your interest.
Treasurer Meyer, thank you for that, and thanks for this morning. Always appreciate you being alongside, and we'll try to Zoom, middle of next week to make sure there isn't items that we really need to tackle. And the lead from our core folks. Wendy.
Mr. Chairman, I think you might want to wait till the week after, so you also have the opportunity to review garden level, and that way your discussion can be comprehensive of all static content.
Perfect. Okay. So we're looking at about 10 days down the road that we'll try to get together.
Mr. Chairman, before you leave, I would like to try to lock in your calendars.
Talk calendar.
Let's talk calendaring. Auditor Racina did leave her availability. So we've confirmed the July 17th and August 18th date. We need a new September date. And we're gonna make this easy because I gave you options and she's only available for certain days. So her preferred date is September 24th.
So we'd be moving it from the 25th then to the 24th. Okay.
There's a conflict, I believe, on the executive branch side with Treasurer Meyer and auditors.
I can do that.
I don't have meetings plugged into.
Mr. Chairman, I have reconciled the dates of your legislative. There's not any conflicts
Okay,
with
that's
your other committee assignments for all three of you, so I can check that when proposing.
good enough for me if you wanna.
Okay, the next. Representative Nicholas, okay. The next date that Auditor Racina is for October, she selected October 17th. They have stable token on the 24th.
It's
October 17th.
I can do October 17th.
15th, I believe, looks okay.
The Thursday. You have school facilities the day before, so you can just spend the night.
Yeah.
Representative Nicholas, you have appropriations later that month, and Representative Sherwood, so you guys, is that good for you, Representative Nicholas? Okay. And then we are going to lock in a November date, and in the event we don't need a meeting, we can always release it, but November 14th was the preferred day with Auditor Racina, and she had another conflict with the meeting on the 13th.
What do I have to look at the
You guys don't,
judiciary and
currently they're not on the calendar.
let's do the 14th then. I'm okay with that.
Representative Nicholas and Representative Sherwood.
Yes, I can do November 14th. Thank you.
Okay. And Treasurer Meyer, I believe these dates work for you as well. Oh, okay. Okay. All right, well, we will send out meeting appointments just for everybody's calendaring. It's July 17th, August 19th, September 24th, October 17th, and November 14th. I'll email VI and everybody else.
Yeah, I was just making sure that I've got August in there. Next couple months, pretty busy. So, anything else, Brianna? Brandon, anything from your Billy Wood? Appreciate everybody. Thank you. We are to the end of it. Rachel, Rick, thank you for everything this morning. And we are adjourned.
Thank you guys for all your hard work.